You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. In November of 2021, we released an episode called The Complete Band Interviews. The episode is 7 hours and 55 minutes long and contains 12 interviews with members of propaganda and covers 15 propaganda songs total. The episode starts with Chris's interview about duplicate keys of Caro, and then goes into conversations with Sulynn about tertium non-dater and the only good fascist is a dead fascist. Then listeners hear from David Guillas about Cut into the Earth, then over to Todd and his brother Kent Kowalski discussing Dark Matters, before returning to David again for a conversation on Utter Crap Song. Then Sulynn comes back in to discuss Purina Hall of Fame, before turning to a marathon interview with Jord where we cover The Fucking Rich, Fuck the Poor by Global Genocide, whose bassist Luke recently passed away. And then we hear from Jord on government issues beyond and wishing. Then we hear 2 more interviews with David Guillas on refusing to be a man before discussing his penchant for building guitars. Then Chris returns for an hour-long chat with Keith about True by Concrete Blonde, Gamble by Lowest of the Low, and What Price Would You Pay by Code of Honor. Sulynn rounds off the Complete Band Interviews episode with a chat about Night Letters. To date, thousands of people have downloaded this insanely long episode, which completely blows me away and sort of reinforces why record labels do compilations. But the time has arrived for the Complete Band Interviews Volume 2, which blows me away as well. The Sulynn Night Letters interview came out on the Complete Band Interviews episode before that actual episode was released. I tacked it onto the very end thinking no one would hear it. But then Keith and I did the Night Letters episode soon after and featured another interview with Beav on Night Letters, and then immediately after that did a long interview with Todd about Fuck the Border. After that, I did a 9-episode series with Chris as co-host discussing his A Catastrophic Break with Consensus Reality album, which was released last year digitally worldwide. And then I also discovered a long-forgotten interview Keith did with Sulynn about Without Love. So this Complete Band Interviews Volume 2 episode features discussions on Night Letters, Fuck the Border, tons of conversation on I Spy, 9 songs in 1 hour with Chris, and closes out yet again with Sulynn. If you've heard these already, thank you so much for listening, and if you're hearing them for the first time, thank you so much as well. Please enjoy these conversations about propaganda with Beav, Todd, Chris, and Sulynn. That day that he and Beav sat there for ages rehearsing the riffs to Night Letters. Like they just sat in Todd's house over and over and over and just played those riffs together over and over. And it was a really hard tune. So I emailed Beav and I asked him if he had any thoughts and reflections on Night Letters for the episode. And the thoughts that he emailed back to me were too good to not have him explain it himself on the show. So I said, Beav, what are you doing in 10 minutes? And he's like, well, I'm sitting in my basement. And I was like, well, would you be interested in doing an impromptu, unplanned interview about Night Letters? And he was gracious enough to say yes. So I jumped on the phone with Beav for, I think it was like 15 or 20 minutes. And we talked about what it was like to make Night Letters and how this was a transformative song for him. So what you're about to hear is a totally unprepared and completely off the cuff improvised chat with Beav. Usually I do some preparations for conversations like this, and this one is just me and Beav having a chat about this tune. So without further delay, enjoy my conversation on Night Letters guitar with David Guillas. David, welcome back to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
Hey, glad to be back.
So this is really funny for me right now, and I love how this all came together because I just randomly messaged you a little while ago on Instagram, and I said, hey, do you have any thoughts on the song Night Letters? And because this to me seems like such an important one, and you were like, do I have thoughts? Do you have an hour? And then you sent me some really great comments. And then I was like, okay, we should just record this. What are you doing right now? So this all came together in like 5 minutes. So I am really happy that we did this, but it's just so random. So how are you feeling about my totally random invitation today?
I'm happy to do it. You know, it's a great song. I'm also isolated because we have a family member who's in close contact. They have COVID, and so we can't go anywhere, housebound. So you are giving me a little reprieve from the boredom of being housebound.
Well, I can see you've got a guitar hanging on the wall behind you. Are you in your workshop right now making some great stuff today?
Yeah, I'm just down. I've got an hour or so to spare, so I'm down here chipping away at a project. And yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's talk about Night Letters. Let me talk to you about this really quick. I remember the first time I ever heard this song. I was living in England in 2009, and I got the CD version from Hassel Records, which put out the record in the UK. And this song came on, and this song hit me as hard as something like Back to the Motor League the first time I heard it. Like, I'll never forget hearing this song for the first time. And then when I saw Propaganda in Saskatoon the next year, Todd was standing by me after sound check because I was working for the student newspaper, and I got to come in early and watch the sound check. And I was talking to Todd about the record, and I asked him about Night Letters, and he said, yeah, Beav and I sat there for basically months on this song. And I'll never forget him telling me that because he just gave this impression of how challenging of a song this was. And I want to hear the story of this song from your point of view, because I get the impression from your messages that this is a big one for you. So can you just kind of tell me the story of Night Letters from the best of your recollection?
Yeah, back then it was so we were writing, I guess, because I joined the band in 2006, and you know the band's kind of always writing, and so it was my first foray into the world of writing with those guys. And I spent a lot of time with Chris writing, but I also would go over to Todd's house. And we just work on stuff together, and he'd show me riffs. And it was sometimes scary because he'd show me these guitar parts, and I could not fathom how someone's brain came up with them. And then I could not fathom how the hell I was going to actually be able to play them myself. It was really like, at first my insecurity had the better of me, and I was just like, what am I doing in this band? I cannot play this. They will figure me out sooner than later because I cannot play this. But anyways, as time goes on, we were talking about, there's a riff that happens at about the 2-minute mark. Mm-hmm. And then it repeats later in a bit of a more simplified form, but at the riff at the 2-minute mark, that was it. That I referred to that as the riff, because in my mind, I almost thought like, okay, if I can play this riff, if I can execute it the way that honors Todd's vision, then I've made it. I can handle anything else that this band throws at me. So I really took that challenge seriously, and it took a long time. I changed the way I held the pick. I changed that because the way I used to hold it was just not going to cut it. It was flawed, and no one had ever told me it was flawed. And then I quickly realized it was flawed. So I had to kind of flip the way I held the pick, which in itself was like learning how to walk again, and then trying to figure out how to play this riff. And it took me, when I say months of concentrated, focused practice, I'm not kidding. It was a big achievement when I finally got it.
Which one is the riff to use? Is it the one where George's hitting those China cymbals in the background? Down. That's the one?
That's the one, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I'm curious, you also mentioned something about the opening to the song. Tell me what you feel when you hear that riff that kicks in right at the beginning.
Yeah, that opening riff, it's the way I described it to you, it's like the ultimate visual riff. which I'm just so drawn to visual music that doesn't need words or lyrics or singing or anything. It's just the rhythm and the melody and the chords. That's enough. It communicates an idea. And for me, that opening riff of Night Letters, it just like, I cannot hear that and not picture myself trudging through knee-high snow on a cold, miserable Winnipeg afternoon. And Todd might have actually said that was his goal. I don't remember if he did or not, but it doesn't matter. I mean, if that was his goal, then he achieved it in my books. Like that's a success, and it relates and it supports the lyrics so much, just having that vision of someone trudging through the snow, especially, as you pay attention to the lyrics, you're picturing like a newcomer, somebody who's never experienced this kind of climate before. And all the other challenges that come with, being a refugee. And anyway, it just fits together like this perfect puzzle for me.
Amazing. You are well known for your instrumental work at this point. We've talked about Agassi and Giant Sons a lot on this podcast, and I'm actually interviewing David from Giant Sons, the other David, later today for a different song. So David's going to be on the podcast soon too.
That's hilarious.
And yeah, I know it's I had to have all three of you. It wasn't an option for me. But you appreciate totally instrumental music in a way that, I don't get to chat about very often. And there is an instrumental version of this song on Propagandy's Bandcamp page because the demo never had vocals laid down before you all went down to Colorado. And I'm wondering what you remember about that demo process at Chris's house to create this song, which didn't have demos laid down and people can download as an instrumental.
I did not know that. My memory is a bit foggy about all that. My memory of working on that song, like I said, was just being with Todd, me and him in his living room, just kind of learning riffs, and also just my own fear and sense of like, I'm not worthy of being with these other guys because I cannot play this music. But then, of course, as time went on, I could play it, which was for me it's a big personal achievement.
So I've talked about the tracking of this record with Jason Livermore on a different episode. And what do you remember? Like, do you have any specific memories about tracking this song in the studio down in Colorado?
Specifically this song, I think I just remember just the fear and like, okay, am I gonna, I can play this in my living room. I can play this in the comfort of Chris's basement where we used to jam. Can I pull this off in the studio with Jason Livermore sitting right there, scrutinizing every single note I'm playing? Like, am I pulling it sharp? I just remember it being very stressful. But in the end and in hindsight, it was like, Jason's such a good dude. And it was my own baggage. It was my own, insecurities that was making me feel that way.
I'm wondering about the chords on this song as well. I was watching a playthrough video. There's a guy on YouTube who plays every Propagandy song, and he's a fantastic guitar player. His name's Clem, and he plays in a band called Last Note. And I watch all of Clem's playthrough videos because he follows the Sheet Happens books to the T. And so if I see something in the book written down, I can go watch Clem execute it perfectly every time, and it's awesome. And there's a lot happening in this song, and like there's chords where it goes through and then it'll be like din din, and on the blast beat part din 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 din, and it's got this little like these like raises in the notes and everything, and it's just all over the place. And I mean, this is a very dexterity oriented song, and I'm wondering if you can talk about anything that you learned new playing guitar, because this thing is all over the place, and I'm sure you had to have played some parts like on guitar for the first time in your life, like new chords, new things that you had never done before.
Yeah, well, you mentioned dexterity, and for me, that's it. I guess it's that more metallic style of playing where it's a lot of single note stuff, and your left and right hand are coordinated playing together. That's not how I came up playing, really. I was much more, and I still am much more into chords and kind of finding melodies within the chords, less so into like the really refined, fast picking. And so for me, that was the learning curve, is like these really small movements in your right hand that have to be precise and accurate, lining up precisely with what's happening on your left hand. That was the big challenge. And it's almost like it was like a exercise regime. It wasn't a musical exercise in learning how to play this. It was a physical, I need this hand to match this hand, and they need to do it at the same time. And, it was very physical.
Something else that really jumps out at me here is the fact that everybody who's a fan of this band thinks about Todd as the bassist of the band. And he played guitar in I Spy, so he's obviously got a lot of guitar playing experience, but like that's not what the listeners of the band see when they think about this band. So what do you think about Todd as a guitar player coming up with riffs like this? Because it's almost like he does it like undercover, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, he is a huge influence on me as a guitar player. I love guitar players where you listen to them and you're just like, what? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Listen to Chris, and Chris is also just a massive influence on me. But I can understand his melodic sensibilities. I don't mean to say that they're predictable, but I just feel like we're on the same wavelength, or whatever you want to call it. I kind of tend to get where Chris is coming from with his ideas.
Yeah.
His ideas are just like, whoa, but it's just so amazing. And then to sit down with him and to see how he's playing these things. And I remember back then when I was learning Night Letters, he was really into these like bluegrass guitar instructional books, and he's learning how to play bluegrass. And it involves a lot of there was some sweep picking, I believe it or not, even though that's considered more of a metal thing, and just really precise little movements. And, he's just so committed at whatever he does. And he's such a good guitar player. It's a shame he's not a guitar player in a band these days, like he was back with I Spy.
Amazing.
But I always kind of took it as my mission. One of my missions in the band was, okay, whatever idea he's got, I just want to be a conduit to honor this idea, because it's going to be me or Chris playing it live or on the record. But the idea came from Todd. And so I really wanted to honor that. And that was a challenge because, like I said, I didn't always intuit where the idea was coming from or what it was trying to achieve. It took effort and work.
I don't know if I've never asked this of any of you before, but I know that sometimes in the studio, I'll know that people in the bands who play different instruments will sometimes sit down and perform a tiny little guitar part here or there, or something that they don't play. I remember seeing a video from the band Strung Out where Chris, the bass player in Strung Out, was playing a guitar riff that was going to be on a record called Blackhawks Over Los Angeles. I was following their tour recording visual diaries and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Chris is playing guitar in the studio on this riff. And I'm wondering if you guys have ever done anything like that, where one of you will switch something up and come in and just play a little lick on a recording just to get the part done or anything like that.
You mean kind of a spur of the moment kind of in the studio?
Yeah, would Todd ever be oh, okay, I'll do that, and he'll just play a little guitar part that goes on the record? Is there anything like that to your knowledge?
I'm sure there is, but for the most part, the band was just a very well rehearsed machine. So by the time we would go record, there were no surprises. Everything was flushed out. I'm sure there was the odd little detail, especially vocally and harmonies and stuff, but by and large, for the most part, everything was really meticulously worked out.
Amazing. Well, I love the fact that you're willing to do this with me to talk about Night Letters for a few minutes. Getting the stories of the people who lived the creation of these songs is something that's an endless thrill for me. But something else has happened related to you and Chris since you and I last spoke, and that you delivered your guitar that you built for him to Chris, which he demonstrated on Patreon. And I'm wondering if you can give a little reflection on that guitar building that you that we talked about last time, but has since been completed and delivered to Chris.
It was really an honor to build for Chris, as someone I see as a really good friend, but also as someone who's been a mentor to me and someone who's been an inspiration and all those things. It was just similarly, when I first joined the band, I couldn't help feel what the hell am I doing here? Why do they even want me? Same kind of feelings when I was building this guitar. I don't have a lot of credentials as a builder. And the whole time I'm building it, I'm just thinking, why does he want me to build my guitar? So, there's I felt a lot of pressure, but I also just felt a lot of joy, for lack of a better word, building it, because I love building, and to be able to build for someone that, I admire so much. It was, like I said, it was a huge honor, and he seems to like it. He's the kind of guy, he'll tell me if there's a few things we needed to tweak, and but he seems to like it, and so I'm pretty proud of that. And Yeah.
What do you like about that build? I know you have very specific thoughts on each one of your builds, which you talked about in your guitar building bonus episode we did. What do you like about that guitar particularly?
I like the body shape. It's nothing, we didn't break any new ground with the body shape. It's sort of in the same vein as a lot of like shredder style guitars. But I liked it because we sort of designed that shape together. I would draw things and he'd suggest things as we went. And, so I like that. It's a shape that I wouldn't have come to on my own. And I also just kind of like that it looks just very much like wood. It's not trying to look like a car, or it's not trying to look futuristic. It's just like, there's some wood. It was carved. It was assembled with care, and it's now able to make music. And that's kind of what I dig about it.
Amazing. Well, David, we're talking on New Year's Eve right now, and I'm super grateful to you for spending a few minutes with me to chat about Night Letters and the guitar building updates. Tell everybody where they can find your guitar work once again, if they haven't done so at this point.
I'm on Instagram. I post every once in a while. Just search Stranger Guitars on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, David, Happy New Year, my friend. It's been a pleasure having you collaborate with the podcast for the last couple of years. And I'm sure that we'll randomly stumble across each other again soon whenever I have another, episode that really jumps out at me about wanting to chat with you. So have a great New Year's and keep up the great work. And I'll chat with you soon. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, Greg.
Propaganda bassist and vocalist Todd Kowalski right now. So please enjoy our conversation. Todd, welcome back to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
Thank you, Gregors.
It is delightful to have you here. Todd, last time I saw you, I was in Winnipeg, and now I'm back here in Buffalo. And I'm curious how, your reflections are about those trio of hometown shows and how things have been for you since those shows.
Those were a good time, I thought. It was fun to get rolling again just a little bit, play some shows. And since then, we just been making new songs at our little jam space there. And yeah, it's going pretty good. So it's good.
Nice. How often are you all getting together?
We were like 3 times a week there. And now just because of Christmas, we slowed down for a second and then we'll be back at it.
Wonderful. Are you feeling pretty excited about some of the stuff that you've been putting together riff-wise? I know last time you were here when you were with Kent, you were talking about putting together some riffs. And we also talked about how Victory Lap had 2 Todd songs. And I'm wondering how you're feeling about your material for the next record.
Good. I have lots of stuff on the go, and yeah, it's good. And Chris has started going really good too. So yeah, we're sitting pretty good at this point. Usually we're off to a slower start than this, so it's good.
Very nice. Well, hopefully the pandemic, it was like the enforced vacation can lead to some pretty beautiful productivity if people are able to channel that energy. Does that make sense?
It's either. Yeah, I think it's pretty good because I haven't been going to some things that I usually do, so it's kind of good.
Excellent. Well, the reason why you're back on the podcast here is to talk a little bit about the song Fuck the Border, which has a pretty long history. So we're going to go back a little bit and talk about your band before Propaganda. I Spy, one of your bands before Propaganda. And we've never really talked about I Spy on the podcast with you. And since Fuck the Border is attached to I Spy, I'm really excited to talk about some of those memories that you may have. And a lot of people out there who are listening may never have listened to I Spy, and they still totally can. And so I'm kind of looking to promote that band as well. So can you do a little bit of an overview of I Spy? Maybe start off with who was in the band and talk a little bit about where you were based when the band was active.
I guess I Spy started almost before me. All the other guys were jamming with our friend Dave Waller. I actually didn't know any of them at the time, but the first time I ever saw those guys, they were playing in a park, and they were trying to do they did a cover of Aces High by Iron Maiden. And of course the song's impossible to sing. So like Dave's like singing wasn't all the best on it, but I took note that like, I can't believe those guys played the whole song, like with all the solos and that. Or it's not that I couldn't believe it. I was just like, fuck, pretty rad. They pulled that off for the most part, you know? Like, I didn't know them or anything. But I had them, it somehow stuck in my head, and I moved to Winnipeg, but I would go back in the summer to Regina. And I had them in my head, those guys, because they were also played like some punk songs, like I think like, I don't know what, I can't remember, but so like I was like, maybe those guys, like without without the singer. I don't know how I did it, but I asked my friend Marlon, I was like, do you think those guys would want to jam with me? And he's like, I'll ask them. And they did. They didn't even know who I was. So
nice.
I don't know how that happened, but I got into the basement. I had my song, it's one of the bonus songs on the, I can't even remember what it's called, but on that Perversity is Spreading records, one of the bonus songs was the first song we ever played. And I remember starting to play it, for some reason, like, I don't do this with Propaganda, but I just stepped in with my guitar, started playing it and singing the song as if like here it is, you know, like full on, like
nice.
And like, I just remember them lighting up, like their faces, you know, especially Rary, the guitar player. Like, I just remember looking over, like, he's just like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know that feeling well.
Yeah. And, and then James the drummer, he's just such an immediate person that he just started, like, we were playing the first minute as if it was a show.
Nice.
Like, he's just playing, like, he just started drumming along, and as soon as the bass, Rary and Dave, the other two guys, got the hang of the song, yeah, we were just playing it as if we were playing a concert. And I jumped off James' mom's couch, hit my head on the roof, knocked myself out unconscious for a second.
The first day?
Yeah, first day.
Excellent.
And then, I just felt like we really, like, all kind of hit it off. And that went for, I guess the summer. And me and James were just hanging around all the time, driving around in his mom's car, you know, listening to Sepultura and stuff, just reclining at nights in parking lots, just listening to whatever, punk records, metal records, everything, and all that shit. We liked sort of different punk bands, but we'd seen enough and liked enough that were similar that we could, like, I was more into like the Accused and I guess the more heavy metallic type punk stuff, and James was more into like maybe like the Descendants and kind of, you know what I mean, more of the kind of poppier stuff.
Sure.
But we were both into the Nils, this Canadian band, the Doughboys, No Means No, SNFU. So like we had enough that was like similar, and I like the Descendants a lot too, actually, and just like I lean towards the kind of heavier stuff.
Sure, yeah.
And then so we were just rocking. Then I went back to Winnipeg. I think we played a couple shows that summer, I think. Yeah, we did actually. And I think we even came and played in Winnipeg. Yeah, we were just kind of getting going. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we came and played in Winnipeg before I moved back. And just by chance, actually, and I have a picture of it somewhere, but Chris and Samson were both at that show. And I think like Chris has a memory of walking in and I would used to see Chris outside record stores and stuff. Like I was just like I was new to Winnipeg, but I was such a music enthusiast, you know? So he recognized me as like, hey, that's the guy that's always like around record stores and shit, you know?
Yeah.
And so he was watching and he was like, oh, this is like, he liked it, you know, him and Samson. And like the picture that I have of the show is like, I recognize I didn't know any of them at the time, but I recognized every single person in the picture. Which is
question about that picture. Did you provide that picture to Sheldon Burney for the Missing Like Teeth book?
Maybe if it's like from behind the stage and you can see Chris and John and.
Yeah. I think I've seen that picture. I think it's in Sheldon's book.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
right on. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of funny. And then, yeah, but then those guys all like went back to Regina. So, but I kind of felt like we made a tape of the Winnipeg show.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like listening to I had all winter to listen to the tape. And I was like, this tape's not cutting it, or sorta, like I was like, we need all new songs.
Yeah.
Is what I thought, except for like maybe one or two. And then so all winter I was just like making these new songs. And I remember going back at Christmas and like I had whatever the first song is on the Propagandy 10-inch.
Uh-huh.
Like I remember playing just like James lived in just the world's shittiest house. And I remember us being in the basement and just starting playing it and like seeing those guys light up again, like the same way, like just for some reason, especially Rary, like he just, like I could just see he was just like something like the way that he would receive songs really egged me on,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I remember just like, okay, we're way better now,
Yeah.
like still not the peak of humanity, but like we're like better, like now we sound like a band that we would listen to,
Excellent.
you know what I mean? Like I would listen
Yeah.
to this band, at least at the time.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and so yeah, but that was just for Christmas holidays. But over the course of the rest of the winter, I guess they were sold enough on it. Or I guess I went back another summer. We did more shows. Then we came back actually and did a show with Propagandy with us opening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Chris and John liked the last show they saw. And I guess probably over the year, me and Chris were saying hi to each other or something,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then we came back. We played a show with Propagandy, and I remember we actually all flipped a coin to see who would play like last, and then we didn't want to be last,
Of course,
But
yeah.
the coin, I remember the coin flip like going exactly in our favor, like second last.
Yeah.
Like there was 4 bands. I was like, okay, that's exactly where I want to be, And yeah, I remember like we played super, super good that particular show, and Propagandy kicked ass. Like I would say it's like one of the highlight shows probably for me.
Yeah. And that was in Winnipeg?
Yeah, in Winnipeg. And it was full, like Propagandy was like kind of kicking off. How to Clean wasn't out yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like yeah, I think it was, yeah, they were just still kind of making it. And then, oh, what happened? Oh yeah. And then, yeah, all those guys went back to Regina. But I think they were sold enough that they all moved to Winnipeg, like right after, like them and our friend Lorna. And so we were all living in the same, actually, they moved into a different house, but then they got robbed. All our equipment got stolen. And, then they moved into our house. Just as Chris was leaving, like he was going to move into a house with the guys from Red Fisher and all that,
mm-hmm.
Which was kind of a funny little switch over. We had a big R for Rary, like we put it on the wall, like, okay, Rary's here now, yeah. Taking over. And yeah, Chris for a while he was like had like leaver's remorse, because me and him were such good friends, and
yeah,
he's kind of protesting sleeping in this car in the yard for a couple nights.
Oh my god!
Mostly for a joke, like. And then
let me back in.
Yeah, and then he actually slept. I had this little single bed on the floor, and like a child's bed, basically. Yeah, and then he came and we were both slept in the child's bed for one night. And it was so funny. That night was just insane. We were laughing so hard, and then yeah, the next day he was gone. It was like okay, we've milked this for all weekend, and then and then what else? I don't know. That's not even a good story, but
so well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and then yeah, we just kept riffing it up. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so as far as I can tell, I Spy has 4 releases. You've got Perversity is Spreading, which came out, I think it was posthumously on G7. Then there's
Yeah.
Revenge of the Little Shits, 10-inch
That's
on
the second one.
Recess.
Yeah.
I Quit Your Army, Wiener, which is a split 7-inch with the German band But Alive, and then the I'd Rather Be Flag Burning 10-inch split with Propaganda, also on Recess Records. But then there's also the When We Grow Up 5-inch split, which came out on the Play at Your Own Risk box set Volume 2 with Recess. Yeah. So I'm wondering about like the order of the release of these records that I Spy did.
Well, the first, besides that live tape, the first recording ever of I Spy was the 10-inch.
The Propaganda one?
Yeah, like we never once listened to hear what we sound like.
Okay.
Like we never had a tape player to record it or whatever, or no one thought, I don't know what, we just, like I remember hearing our songs being played back like, that's what that song sounds like. Yeah, it was really weird.
Nice.
And, so it's that, then Revenge.
Okay.
Then that 5-inch, then that Perversity is Spreading. It's just a collection of the other 2, really.
When did Quit Your Army come out?
That was the last. Those songs were recorded at the same time as the Revenge of the Little Shits.
Okay, gotcha.
Same recording, just, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to talk a little bit about Revenge of the Little Shits, because, there are still copies of this record widely available from Recess Records, the original 90s pressing. Todd Congealier at Recess has 845 copies, he said, that he would very much like to sell. And so I did a little bit of digging on some information on this record. So it has 10 songs produced by John Sutton, came out on Recess. And, I'm wondering if you have any like reflections on the Revenge of the Little Shits specifically, because I would like for everybody out there listening to actually buy this thing, because there are copies available and you don't have to pay through the nose like you do for some other like old vinyl and things like that. So I'm just wondering about your thoughts on this particular record.
That record, I like it. I haven't listened to it for like 10 years or something, but like I kind of try not to dwell on the past or something for some reason. I don't like to go back, but I remember liking it all. I'm sure there's like, and we were going to go tour the States like as soon as the record, like a month later, so we couldn't like postpone it or anything, just the way things roll like in real time, but I still felt like when we recorded, I was like, the songs are roughly what we want, like you record in 1 or 2 days in that time too. So it's just like, okay, we got our songs, and they were actually recorded in Mark from he's our sound guy now.
Oh yeah.
Basement. Yeah. So they're recorded in his basement actually.
No way. That's awesome. Did he have like
a
studio back then? Was he recording other bands too?
He recorded the Choke record and a few other things, but I think maybe he decided he was more of a live sound guy. Yeah.
That's very cool.
He wasn't there very much, and and I remember the highlight of that was which Barney claims he didn't have these, but we went into his room closet and he had white jeans, and I remember Sutton putting on his white jeans, walking around wearing them for a while. But
oh man,
he claims he never had white jeans, but he did. So.
Nice.
It's been a point of contention for the last 30 years.
Well, it's on the record now on the podcast. So as far as everybody out there listening knows, this is like stone cold fact. So it is now documented forever. Did you do the artwork for the Revenge of the Little Shits 10-inch?
Yeah. It actually, the real pic, like it was no work of art, but the real picture looked way better than the final pressing. Like it had these nice kind of purples in it, like on the mountain. Like I was trying to get the same colors from that government issue record U.
Yeah.
So it looked a lot nicer. It was still this cheap, shitty guy who can't draw at the time, but it's like, it looked nicer.
Nice. Well, and that's I love that Government Issue record as well. Jordan and I talked about that for a long time when he was on the podcast. Cool. That was a ton of fun. Okay, so I'm assuming the Revenge of the Little Shits came out with Recess because of the pre-existing relationship, because of the I'd Rather Be Flag Burning 10-inch. Is that how that relationship all came to be?
Recess, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris was like, it was basically just Chris, like, oh, he's saying, hey, Todd, you got to hear this band, and I think he liked it, yeah.
Excellent. So that Propaganda I Spy split 10-inch comes up over and over again as being like a clear fan favorite for longtime Propaganda listeners. Like, so many people have told me just how essential that record was. And I'm curious where it stands for you as someone who you play now in the band that's on one side of the record, but you then played on the other side of the record. So this has got to be like a really, like a kind of a special release for you, I would imagine. How do you feel about that split 10-inch in general?
I guess I don't spend too much time thinking about it, but I like the song Mutual Friend on the Propaganda side a lot,
Heck yeah.
I think that's one of the ones I like on there the best. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like we made our songs, made the record, and we're stoked to have it. I thought, I don't know. It did, like, obviously it helped I Spy. Like, it was going to be like I Spy go on tour with Propaganda through Texas or something.
Yeah.
And then it kind of didn't happen. And like, kind of guess the condolence prize, like, from Chris and Jordan was, okay, how about you guys be on the other side of this 10-inch with us? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And Lorna, the woman that came with the other guys, I Spy guys, with, actually paid for our recording. Or, like, we paid her back, obviously. But then, like, me, her, Rary, James, and Dave, and Samson, actually, like, maybe Chris, and that he was probably doing it somewhere else. But yeah, I remember. Well, I specifically remember me, Lorna, Samson, and James and Rary, like, folding, like I think there's 20,000 or something of them, like, of the CDs.
Yeah.
And we were out of cardboard.
Yeah.
Like, putting stickers, gluing, it's an insane amount. Like, I remember, I think the first batch was like 6,000 or something. Then they pressed more. So I remember, getting to about 1,500 and just being like, holy shit.
Yeah. I love those.
Then we went to, like, the kind of the brown photocopied version.
That's the one that I have.
Okay, and then we're like, okay, all we have to do is fold these up and stuff them in here,
Yeah, because they go in like that plastic sleeve. I've got that one.
Yeah. So that was like our upgrade. But initially, like, we were like cutting with scissors the cardboard to fit, folding the cardboard, gluing the sides, and putting the sticker on. And
yeah. That's the one that I know Beeve has, because Beeve held up his copy when I was talking to him on Zoom one time, and that's the one he's still got his original one that he bought in like 1995.
Yeah, and it's got kind of flowers on it.
Yep, and it's like it's all hand folded, and it's just got that big sticker on the front of it. Yeah, those are really cool. That's awesome. And well, so recently also, I came across a couple of really affordable copies of the Play at Your Own Risk box set and the trifold edition, and sent one up your way. And I'm wondering how it felt to, like, unpack that thing, because I was really pleased to be able to send that.
Yeah, it's cool to see. Like, I kind of forgot about the artwork in there.
Yeah, I love that 5-inch too. I mean, that's a really cool little thing. Like, whenever we started this podcast, I didn't even know that 5-inch even existed. And to find out about that, like, that's the kind of thing that, like, doing this kind of show, like, I've discovered all these little extra things that y'all have done over the years that are just so neat to discover as somebody who considered themselves like a super fan of the band. And then to discover how many things I didn't know about, that's just been such a thrill. So I'm glad that you're able to get one of those now as well, because those are really it's a cool little box set. Okay, so recently, gonna transition a little bit here, and I don't know how smooth this segue is, but whatever. But recently I was talking to Beeve about Night Letters.
Okay.
And he and I were both talking about how, since you're the bassist in Propagandy, that people who are a fan of Propagandy associate you so much with bass, but and not as much with guitar. But you play guitar in I Spy, and your riffs and Propagandy and your songs are a massive part of the discography over the last 20 years. And so before we talk about Fuck the Border itself, I'm wondering if you can talk to the listeners a little bit about your guitar regimen and how you engage with an instrument that Propagandy fans don't really associate with you unless they know your I Spy history. So I'm wondering a little bit about your guitar habits.
Well, after I do a little exercising in the morning, I just get right to it. Just that's the first thing I do. Just go to my guitar and just start playing. I have the pedal where you just press it and whatever you just played. So I spend a lot of time just jamming with myself, improvising.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just play jazz, anything. I just kind of play different styles all the time. I play a lot of bluegrass guitar. Everything. I practice a lot every day. Yeah.
Do you consider yourself first and foremost a guitarist?
Sort of, I guess. In a way, to myself, probably to no one else,
Nice. Well, an episode that's going to come out before this one is the Night Letters episode, where I did talk to Beeve about when he joined the band, and he felt that learning Night Letters was sort of his major turning point of realizing that he was actually good enough to be in the band. He said that Night Letters was the moment of truth for him. And I'm wondering what you remember about sitting in your house with Beeve and working on the riffs for that particular song, just to see how those stories overlap a little bit, because people will hear that episode right before this one.
Yeah. Well, I got a new guitar. That's what I mostly remember. I got one of those John Petrucci guitars from Dream Theater.
Nice.
I just fucking got it and just started riffing, I was just sitting on my couch, and it was I had all kinds of stuff that I was observing, and in the city and people I know while riffing,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I just remember thinking, I think this is going to be a good one if I can get the right lyrics, And then it kind of I was sitting on the bus, and kind of the idea of some of the lyrics were kind of coming clearer. And then, and I remember the opening riff, because there's I don't know if it's what the word is, dissonant or whatever. It's just an unusual combination. I remember I played for Chris at first. I remember thinking, I'm not sure if he likes that or not. And then but I just stuck to it. I liked it. And then I remember when we got to Blasting Room 2, I think I kind of noticed Bill Stevenson didn't seem to like it. I was just I like it. I like it. You know what I mean?
Heck yeah.
By then, Chris was into it by then. I think just his initial thought was is this even in tune? Because we hadn't tuned that low before either, But I was just I just wanted to I don't know. It was just I liked how it sounded. And
that was I think that one's in drop C. I think I was reading the music book yesterday from Sheet Happens, and I think that sounds, does that sound right? Drop C for Night Letters.
Yeah. I just wanted it to sound like a series of setbacks, It's going setback, 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 setback.
Nice. Well, I'm sure that listeners will be furious at me. I'm going to bring us back to I Spy and Fuck the Border here. So everybody's no, Greg, keep talking about Night Letters. No, everybody out there, we're going to talk about Fuck the Border now. So Fuck the Border started as an I Spy song. You all did not record it though officially with I Spy, correct?
No, that was it was me and James and our friend Sean. Rary quit I Spy after our European tour. I think it was just a pretty we were doing all squats with no days off for a couple months, and I think he just had enough by the end. And Dave quit too. We're right then. As soon as we got back from Europe, it just kind of fell apart. Me and James were doing our thing by and still living together and all that. We're kind of keeping it alive, but I just felt like I don't know, it was no, but yeah, me and James were still rocking. Yeah. I think like I felt like James wanted more different kinds of influences, you know, than I did. Like he was listening to all kinds of like eclectic music, which is good, but I was thinking like I was having a hard time like fitting it in. Like I could feel him wanting to change directions, but like when you're the drummer, you can't really like it's hard to change directions if you're the drummer, right? Like because you have to be able to say to the other person like what that is and have them interpret it. You know what I mean? Like I can listen personally, like I can listen to like Fela Kuti or something like some African music and be like, okay, I that's inspired me. I can go put it in you know, like a song, like, you know what I mean? Or bluegrass, like there's some songs of mine there, like I'm playing bluegrass, just put the same picking in a different, like the same style of picking in a completely different riff. And no one's ever going to be like, hey, that sounds like Blazing Larry, you know?
Right, yeah.
And, you know, but if you're the drummer, I think it's a harder experience to do that, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
of course, yeah.
Yeah. So I think I could feel that he was getting like kind of frustrated. And he was like he kept wanting like even like rap and stuff, you know? And I was like to me, like I couldn't see how someone could do that without like ending up sounding like Korn or something, you know, if they even existed. But like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I couldn't envision something that I could personally make sound good.
Right.
You know? And then, yeah, when we're in Europe, I was also noticing like our I Spy songs, like they're almost like sometimes too complicated, you know? Like there's no time where I get to relax and just, you know, like settle into just kind of a groove.
Sure.
And then, so I was like kind of mulling over Juice Pig's wanting rap versus my need wanting to like play something simple like there's this band from Holland, Seeing Red, like they had really, really, really simple songs, but I liked them and like I don't know, just something like more like that. And so I had a mulling in my head. So I was like, okay, Juice Pig, like let's do this. Like I got this song, it's direct, and in the middle we'll have like kind of a more rapish part where you can do, you know what I mean? Like I gave him the start. He played totally different drums than Jord did, and I actually somewhere, which I can't find anymore, I found a version of us playing our song. And James's drums are completely different than Jord, and they're actually in the opposite beat.
Wow.
But they still sound like I was like, this is like he did an awesome job as well, you know?
Yeah.
Like his beat was the opposite, but it had a totally different groove, but I was like, it still sounds rad.
I can actually envision it in my head. I'm kind of going over it right now, and it's really interesting if you allow yourself to envision the drums being on the opposite beat. It's really interesting. Like it's just kind of I'm hearing it in my head. It actually works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like and then in the middle I was like going with like James's rap thing in a way that I could do that I thought would be good. Like not, you know what I mean? Like when you're making a song, like you have what you want to do, and then there's like what you can make
right
sound good, you know? like you have your dreams and then you have your reality.
Sure.
So I just remember just hitting it off, and we had this guy Sean. He was like my friend for a long time, and like before I Spy, we got him on bass, and he was super, super into being in the band too. So. And like we were back to that thing where we were like I remember, Sean jumping off his amp and stuff while we're doing that song, you know, just nice. In the basement, you know, just riffing and playing, and Juice Pig's all into it. Like James would be so into it, like his eyes would close and he's just headbanging, and like he'd be jumping off his seat. Like he's just a fun guy to drum with, you know, like if we'd play a show and there's a couch behind his drums, he'd jump off the seat onto the drums. And even if there's one person watching or nobody watching. So it was kind of it didn't work out very well for us being tight. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, I think our band sounded more like urgent or like almost falling off the rock wheels, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's out of control.
Yeah. At the same time, it's like some of the charm came from that, you know? Like, I listen to the records, I'm like, oh, I wish this was better. I wish this was better, you know? But like somehow, like, it was those guys, and I have the same spirit too, like, and FYP, like Todd from FYP, like, I think, like, all of us kind of had this opposite spirit that is like we don't actually give a fuck how tight this is, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, in retrospect, it's good to be tight, and like the feeling of power you get from like being tight, like us in Propagandy.
Right.
Like I prefer to do the work and get really good, you know?
Yeah.
Like, work the chops, you know? And then like kind of add your own fucking pizzazz later, you know? but like in I Spy, like it would be like all pizzazz. Like, we wouldn't really work out like things, you know?
Right.
Like, is all this shit hitting at the right time? I don't know. I don't give a fuck. Neither do you.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's not a way to go as you get older, or as you want to be a musician and play, you know, and have other people like go, yeah, okay, that's rad, you know? Because other people, they don't know they can't see you, they can only hear it. So if things aren't hitting in time, it's like the power diminishes.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like if those I Spy records were just like even like 5% tighter, like, they'd be way more powerful, you know? Mm-hmm. Like 5% tighter and recorded better. But then sometimes I think, like, I don't know if we could have worked if we went to better studios, you know? Like, if we weren't just sitting there with Sutton and we're with a professional and they're like, do you know what you're playing? I have no idea what I'm playing, but do you know what I mean? Do you know what you're going to record? No.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think, like, if we ended up in the blasting room, like, I don't know, like, I think we would have been like just sent home defeated. Like, suck, you suck, everyone sucks, let's quit, you know?
Yeah, probably. I mean, if you think about it like that, like, I think about like my high school and college bands, and we were a disaster. But we went in there and basically my friends just told me, Greg, play the drums as fast as you can. We will keep up and then we'll be done recording. Like, that's how we went about it.
Yeah.
But it gives it some charm too, you know. It makes those things a little special and unique, and statements in the time and place in your life and where you were at the time, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I listen to Venom or something, it's so off the rails, or Bathory, like, I just feel like the more polished stuff just can't deliver, you know. But then on the other side, like, something that's razor sharp, like fucking Razor.
Yeah.
So like I'm right in the middle. Like, I'm for all of it. Like, if I could achieve it all at once, you know.
Yeah.
If I could achieve all, I would. Like, if you could have that sound that's crazy and the tightness of this, you know. I think that's where, like, I think Chris is in the same. He's like way more a guy wanting to be tight than I am, you know. Mm-hmm. And I go along with it because, like, this is our vibe, you know. Like,
yeah.
And I practice hard. Like, I want to be tight too. Like, I want to be good. I want to be tight. I don't want to be shitty man for the rest of my life. But yeah, I don't know. It's such a fine line. Like I heard the guy Eddie Kramer, who recorded the first Kiss Alive record, you know. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, people like bag on them for re-recording some of their live stuff for the record, but he's like, it's humanly impossible to do what they do and play really well. Like, it's right. Physical. He just says he knows of no single person who could ever do it. So he's like that's the line I kind of have always walked in Propagandy. Like, what's the line between how hard I want to go versus can I keep this under control, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just like some shows, it's like, fuck, I didn't quite keep it under control enough. Other shows is like, fuck, nah, I wasn't, you know what I mean? Like I didn't have enough of that feeling that I like. And
Yeah. Well, and you all were just coming off of 2 years of no shows, and those Winnipeg shows went off pretty darn well for having a 2-year gap in between live performances, you know?
Yeah. I thought the first one's a novelty, you know, so I didn't feel like I played all that well, but then kind of, I came under control the next couple.
Yeah. Night two was my favorite. I was like, that show hit real hard for me. So night two was my vote.
Yeah, probably me too. I can't remember, but yeah.
Yeah. So, Fuck the Border, everybody out there listening probably knows the lyrics. Were the lyrics written basically like they are now for the I Spy version as well?
They were like the version that is that bonus.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So
those were the same I Spy lyrics, I think.
Okay, great. Do you have a memory of like an inciting incident, like if you were like reading the news or something and you read something like caused you to write these lyrics? Do you remember like why you wrote about these particular lyrics?
Yeah, well, at the time I was like trading records with a lot of people and people from Mexico and stuff, and they'd always be putting in flyers and stuff, and I was learning about like the Zapatistas in Mexico and all that, and there's a lot of stuff kind of going on. And and then one of the guys I was trading records with, I can't remember what he said, but he was like, he was going to the States. He's like, I got to get out of here. Or I can't remember why, or you know what I mean? What? But I just kind of like put them, all the ideas into one kind of thing, you know? Like what could be causing all this, you know? Like, and like it's all so much based on economy and stuff. And like, in my tiny little mind, I'm thinking like, why is it just like you can accept all the goods, you can accept, companies and that they're just can go wherever, but single people, like you can fuck someone up, but then when they have to leave, you won't accept them, it's still going on today,
Absolutely.
Like, you like be part of a war in Syria, and then, but we're not going to accept you, or like Afghanistan, especially, or Iraq,
Yeah.
Iraq, I guess. Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's just the same story. Like that's the crazy thing. It's just everything's on such a cycle. It's like it almost never gets old,
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's been so crazy about your music as well, is like the things that we shouldn't even be talking about. I feel like certain things like should age out. Like propaganda lyrics from like 20-25 years ago should not be getting more relevant with each passing year. Like it blows me away,
Yeah, I find it like disappointing and disheartening, but at the same time, like we could see it coming that long ago and no one cared. Everyone's just like, you guys are a bunch of jack-offs. It's like, okay, well, I guess I am, but like no matter what you think about me, this is coming. So fuck off.
Yeah, something else that's interesting too. So we brought up Night Letters earlier, which has an immigration theme as well, a certain story of immigration. Then we have Fuck the Border. So this is something that you've been interested in for a long time and have cared about for a long time. Do you see this as sort of like a recurring plot within your own writing that you believe in and believe should be talked about?
Yeah, and I guess it's just like I just keep coming in contact with people that I believe in, and I'm like I can't believe how they're being treated. It's just like it's more of that than like I'm trying to be cool, like fuck you, pig, fuck the border,
Right.
It's like if you look into the songs are about people, it like fuck the border is just like a young person's way of saying it,
Yeah.
And like then as they get older, it's more like I think like Night Letters, but for some reason even listeners like tend to gravitate, it seems, towards the easy version,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's easier to go fuck the border than like like what's happening in the night letters, you know, like you can't, it's not a easy thing to say, or
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Well,
So
and here in Buffalo, I've got some friends that whose families have like work for the border agencies and things like that, and are border guards. And like, yeah, whenever my dad heard the song "Fuck the Border," it was like a big fight in our household because like this is the thing that like pays for our house and our family. You know what I mean? And we're saying
yeah,
"Fuck the Border." So it's
yeah,
the individual humanity behind each of the people that are featured in these songs. I mean, the power of a single story is something that I think about a lot versus like the story of like if you try to tell a story of like millions of people, it goes over people's heads because it's too much for one single person to really wrap their brain around. But if you talk about a single story, it sort of sinks in a little bit more because you can see that individual humanity, which is what I get whenever I read the lyrics to Fuck the Border, where it's like one person and it's like there's like a central character within that song.
yeah. And I think someone getting mad at it is like totally missing the point.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna read the title and think of every reason on earth why you need a border, and every reason fucking, you know, my daddy worked there and shit, you know, just like you know what I mean, you're missing the point. I think that's a lot of things with a lot of our lyrics. Like if you're gonna sit there and read the lyrics and try to think up of every counterpoint thought ever against every sentence that's ever been uttered, you know, it's like, oh, dude, like, you know what I mean? Like, I can sit there and listen to old records where every single fucking word is stupid and offensive, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just like,
Tell me about playing this song for Jord and Chris when you joined the band, and how that process of like incorporating the song into the band, because it could have just been left behind as like an unused I Spy song, but it went on to become this like iconic propaganda song. And I'm wondering what those two guys thought about this song, you know, 20 plus years ago at this point.
I just remember me and Chris and George getting together, and yeah, and just Chris saying, you want to play Fuck the Border? And I don't know, like sometimes, you know, when like we didn't think too much about stuff, you know,
Yeah.
like even when I'm talking about like that, like Painted Thin recording before I Spy, it's like, you know what I mean, like it's agitating me a little bit, but it's not like I'm fucking sweating bullets, I can't stand you, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just like, it is what it is, you know what I mean? It's just kind of happening, and you're just like, I kind of wish that wasn't happening. But same with yeah, like that, like us playing Fuck the Border, like Chris is like, you wanna whatever, I don't know, just you want to play the song, okay. You know what I mean? And then like I remember George, like we didn't have a recording of the I Spy version or anything, and I remember George starting the drums and it being on the opposite beat, you know, and just thinking like it's the opposite beat. That's the last I thought about it, you know.
Nice.
Or I don't even think I thought that, I just remember thinking, I think that's different than the way James played it. Oh well, I guess we'll go on. I don't care.
Did any other I Spy riffs or anything that were unused get brought over to any of your other songs for Empires, or is that the only one?
Yeah. Although I Spy never like touched it, but it was gonna be that Idle Homes for whatever. But it had totally different words, and I actually wish I went with the other words because they were it was like the other words were about standing there. Like I remember we were like 100 miles from like the Bosnian War and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, and we just like we were also at Dachau earlier, the concentration camp, like earlier in the week or something.
Yeah.
I was getting all these fucking heavy thoughts over there, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, kind of the words were like more geared towards that originally. And I kind of like, I just couldn't piece it together. And then, and then I kind of just went with a different idea, which is, but I remember like the other words were like darker and heavier, you know, like kind of more personally in a way too, which is like, I think that song, like if the lyrics had come across a little more personal, like the song would be at a different level. You know what I mean? Like like I really like the song, but it's like I think it just slightly falls short of like grabbing people the way that I think it could have, you know.
Gotcha.
Like it's like almost like a secondary song, whereas like it could have been like moved itself up like at least 10 Spotify listens.
Yeah, nice. That makes a lot of sense. You know, I thought about that a lot, about what the reissue of Empires did for my opinion of certain songs. And I've said this on the podcast elsewhere, but like to me, the songs that benefited the most from the reissue are the ones that are more challenging to love. Like everybody's going to love Back to the Motor League. Everybody's going to love Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. Everybody's going to love Purina Hall of Fame, no matter what. But the ones that really jumped out at me for the reissue were the ones that were like, with Friends Like These, Who the Fuck Needs COINTELPRO?
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Natural Disasters. All like those are the ones that really jumped out at me as being the ones like, wow, I liked this song before, but I love it now with the new sound. Like that's what that reissue did for me, is it made the songs that like are harder to love because they're more challenging to listen to. It made those a lot more obviously lovable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, I found the same thing when I heard it. Yeah, just like, like for some unknown reason, like the real feel of the songs coming through better. Yeah,
man, I tell you what, COINTELPRO, I cannot believe how much that song benefited from that reissue. Like it is mind-blowingly good now. I've always liked it, but like now I like love it.
I that particular song, I remember when we got home from recording, sitting at my like stereo. You know, when you're in a studio or something, you're never quite sure what it really sounds like till you get home.
Yeah, because everything in the studio is so nice. All the gear is perfect.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like when you're recording an I Spy record, you're like, fuck, this sounds like fucking Metallica. You know, and then you get home and you're like, holy fuck, Metallica.
Yeah.
And then like I literally remember, like I say that as an example, but I literally remember thinking that, like, fuck, I think this is gonna sound like as good as a Metallica record. And then like later, nope, it certainly doesn't. And then it's crazy. So I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore.
Tell me about
COINTELPRO. Yeah, that's the best jump. Yeah,
it is. It's unbelievable. Like when the first time I heard it, I woke up at like 4:30 in the morning because I couldn't sleep the day that the reissue came out, and I came downstairs, put on my headphones, put it on, and I was like, this sounds amazing. And then COINTELPRO came on, and I was like, whoa, I understand everything now. This is amazing.
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm paying, like over time, like people are always wondering, like, you know, like, I love that record, I don't know why they don't like it, you know, or as much. But like they don't really know that like we're sitting in the room knowing what was there. Yeah. And then like, you know what I mean? Like we're coming from the opposite, where we like know like, fuck, this is deadly. And then it kind of like somehow like fishtails just a little out of our control, or out of, you know, maybe everyone, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, just, and then the final thing you get is like, fuck, we kind of blew it, you know? But you know it's all there still. And that's why, like, you can see in Chris's mind, he's just like, over the years, like we gotta somehow get this back, you know? Like he couldn't like mentally like let go, you know? And like, you know, no one in the crowd or fucking the world cares, but like if you are the band, and you know there was something there, and you're just like, it's hard to let go for like we're all sort of perfectionists, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like I kind of joke about fucking being, you know, like not caring, but I actually do care a lot, you know?
Yeah. Like, I mean, of course. And well, and the reissue has these amazing bonus tracks for COINTELPRO, for Fuck the Border. And, you know, the notable difference on the demo version is the fast singing in Fuck the Border instead of the iconic fuck the border, like where it's like you can totally hear it's fuck the border, fuck the border, fuck the border. It's way faster. It's like a lot like machine gun style singing.
What the country down? What do people do? What the country down? What
And, I'm wondering what this demo version and then how that change in the vocal delivery came about for you. And because obviously it worked out in the end.
Yeah. Well, I think like the initial thought, and I can't remember how fast the I Spy version is, but in Propaganda, we tend to keep just ramping the speed up over.
Yeah.
But I remember like the initial impulse was like just to go like fuck the border. You know what I mean? Like like fuck you, fuck you. Like in that kind of succession,
Yeah.
And like I don't know how it was. Like it was that speed in I Spy, but I don't know. Like I think it was just me doing it. Like and then when I got in Propaganda, it's me and Chris doing it. I think it became more of a chant, which is good, like but maybe like as it becomes a chant, it starts to sound more like fuck the border, fuck the border, fuck the border. And as you lose like your own personal, like somehow along the way, I lost the bite of the initial impulse,
Mm-hmm.
or something happened. Then when we got to it, like I was just like, me and Chris were trying to do it for real, with Ryan sitting there recording, and like we just couldn't like do it that good. And I think it was Ryan that said like, why don't you like do it like half the speed, I think it was him that said that, but I'm not sure. It was either him or Chris, because it wasn't me, I know that. And then it was one of those two guys said that, and then we just did it, and we're like, okay, that is way more powerful, Amazing. And I took it, like I remember taking it that night, like Ryan at the end of the day would make you a little tape,
Mm-hmm.
Chris and Jordan went somewhere, and I just stayed back at the studio. I remember just listening to it on the tape deck, like fucking this rips.
Yeah.
Like especially when you've never heard it really. Well, I guess we heard it recorded, but like to just hear it recorded real, and I really like listening to cassette tapes. I kind of like I guess I'm just used to it from when I was a kid, just the way that it compresses into the, like not a digital compression, but just has this sound. Like I just press it. It's just like, it reminded me of listening to tapes that I liked when I was a kid and be like, fuck, I'd be proud of this,
Yeah. A random question I have, those Empire songs for you are particularly vocally abrasive. Like there isn't like a Negretto on there. Like your melodic stuff came later on, like Bringer of Greater Things. Did you just completely blow your voice out nonstop in the studio on those Empires recordings?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think after Empires, after singing March of the Crabs, that was the last one. Yeah, I think my voice was never the same after.
Wow.
Like, ever.
Because it's wild. Like whenever I heard those songs as a fan when I was 19 years old, when that record came out, or 18 or whatever I was just like, wow, I can't believe people can actually do this. Because I was like, there's no way, like my voice would be gone in 8 seconds. Like it would take me under 10 seconds and I wouldn't be able to talk. So
the real problem I realized later that caused me the problem is that like my actual vocal range is not high, and so I'm pushing like Barney from Napalm Death. Like he can do it and he still do it. He does it every note every day, but he hasn't destroyed his voice because it's it's in his range.
Right.
So I was yelling like that hard, but out of my range.
Yeah.
Like just like 100% compressed. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I wasn't going hard unless I could feel like fucking my head exploding, and you know what I mean? Like like I didn't know. Like I think that's the feeling that I was like, you know what I mean? Like this is fucking. But now it's like I don't really enjoy that feeling, or you know what I mean? Like I like the feeling of not pain, you know what I mean? Like to get,
of course.
So
I mean, Barney from Napalm Death is a legend, and the fact that he can that he can do what, because I just saw them live. I mean, Barney's like 53 years old and just completely slays live still. Like he's perfect, and I just can't believe it. But because he's learned how to do it properly in a way that fits within what his natural speaking and singing range is.
Yeah. To me, he's like a 1 in a trillion person. Like, like when I hear him, to me, it's the heaviest recorded voice of all time. Like, yes. I can't think of anything that is heavier. Like when he sings those songs, like, especially if you've done it, you've tried to do it yourself, and like you know what it takes to deliver that impact every sentence he sang. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't tire, it doesn't falter. Like, I think I've seen him like a bunch of times. I've only heard like one line, like, kind of delivered less than half. You know what I mean? Like like literally one line. And I don't know, like, anybody who's recorded heavy music or played live, like, has to realize, like, what a feat that is.
Yeah. And then he talks in between songs, and it's like you're being invited to go have, like, afternoon tea, and he sounds like he should be on the BBC reading the news. But then whenever he talks between songs, he says awesome stuff about people and his worldviews. And you're like, you're the coolest dude of all time, Barney. I just think he's amazing.
Yeah, I do too. I could not say enough about what I think of that guy. And
he's awesome.
Like, and Napalm,
Well, if you've never listened to Napalm Death, everybody go listen to them because they're amazing.
Yeah.
So amazing. Speaking of the new reissue, so I was listening to this earlier, and I'm sure you've maybe noticed this by now, but a notable difference in the new version is that the line "she'll take what's hers" is not in the Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes reissue version. It's like a different vocal take. And so this was something that excited me. It's like, oh my gosh, a different vocal take was used by Jason Livermore for the new reissue version. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on notable differences in any, like, this song, other songs, anything like that, because some alternative stuff made it into the new version.
Yeah, that's the only one I recognize as different, like, there could be stuff everywhere. Like literally, I don't I haven't listened to actually Empires for a year. You know what I mean? Like, I don't sit around and listen to our records.
Right.
Really. Like, I think it's a weird mindset you get yourself into, maybe. Like, sometimes, like, obviously I have to play, like, you don't want to burn them out, right? Like, when you want to go on tour, you want to be like, okay, I still like this,
Yeah.
And like it's fun to like every now and then, when I'm practicing a song, like, I'll keep letting it run, and I'll be like, oh fuck, this is pretty rad, but like I, you know what I'm saying, just like, you're not gonna sit around and listen to your own band fucking day after day. And,
of course.
Yeah. And then that was the original version from like I Spy to Us with Propaganda, was that right now. Yeah. And then I think for some reason I thought like maybe could have some, like, just something a little more substance to the line,
Mm-hmm.
But then when I heard it back again, I was just like, yeah, I think that sounds better.
Cool. So you're definitely okay with the omission of that, like, one particular lyric in there?
Yeah, I was just like, I think Jason or something accidentally put it up like that. I was just like, yeah, it just seems to flow better. I remembered it. It's not like I'd forgotten the line, Like, I've always known it's there. I think I've done it that way a few times live, even just for my own enjoyment or something, but.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just curious about that, because, like, I thought that was just such an interesting little change, because you hear something, that's the best part about this reissue, is you hear something the same way for so many years, so many times, and then you hear it in a new way, and like the little changes here and there, it's just really cool. Like, everybody was freaking out about like the drumsticks getting set down at the end of Natural Disasters, I think it was, like, the song ends, and like Jason left in like George setting down his sticks on the new reissue, and people were like, oh my gosh, you hear George put his sticks down. And like we were just nerding out about it tremendously, of all the little differences that we were noticing in like Instagram and stuff. So we get supremely nerdy about it over here at the podcast.
Yeah, cool. I probably heard it, but I probably didn't realize or didn't remember that I couldn't hear that in the other version, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that stuff too, though, you know?
Yeah,
like
Jason
SNFU does a good job of keeping that stuff in on their records.
Nice.
You know?
Yeah, Jason put in some cool stuff. It's just an incredible piece of work. And whenever I interviewed him for the podcast, he's like, it sounds like a different record. You're going to love it. And I'm like, awesome. And it worked out.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised at how I think it's genuinely just better, which is why I think everyone agrees, you know?
Yeah.
Like like sometimes the problem would be like old bands take their old records and that, but then they try to modernize them, you know, and compress them and, you know, add all this extra tones and, you know what I mean? Just this fake shit, like let's reamp the thing, you know, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I think it just like, it kind of backtracks, you know, because you're like, they actually take away the life and rawness of it and replace it with something more sterile.
Yeah.
Whereas I almost feel like we reverse did that, you know, like what you're getting is more natural to the reality of what it was, you know.
That's so well said. And I mean, when Chris did a little listening party sort of video on his Patreon where he like filmed himself listening to it, and it was really good, but like he talked about so it was really cool to watch him enjoy it, but so many people have also said that this is the reissue that Jord deserved, because Chris said he's like, whenever I hear this version, I hear Jord, and Chris and Jord have been playing together for so many years now. It's like, this is what I recognize as Jord's drumming. And so like everybody agrees that that Jord, like, even if you only updated the drums on this reissue, that Jord deserved this.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like that was my biggest disappointment. That's actually what I was trying to say earlier. When I got home and heard it on my stereo and couldn't hear like that Jordness. Yeah. You know, coming through here and there. Like, yeah, that was the biggest disappointment. I was just like, shit.
Yeah. Is Fuck the Border a given when the band writes set lists? Do you always play this one?
It seems so. I think we've only not played it like once or twice. Like, yeah. So I don't even. Yeah, it never even occurred to me that we always play it until a couple of years ago. It's just like, I don't think we've ever. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't even. Yeah, I just, you know, people have their marker and just start writing. It's just like it's always on the list. So okay.
Well, Todd, I only really have one more question for you. Like I said earlier, this is sort of a theme that comes up throughout your work throughout the years. And, you know, I know that you've done a little bit of work in the community as far as, you know, being engaged with the refugee community in Winnipeg and around the area where you live. And I'm wondering if you can just like tell people what kind of work you've also done within like the community in Winnipeg to address some of the issues that you tend to sing about a lot within your tunes.
Yeah, I guess I was volunteering at this place called the Welcome Place for a long time, and then just through doing that, I got a job at Need Center with kids downtown, and yeah, it was awesome. I'm still friends with a lot of the kids. I haven't been around there for a while. Like I went on tour, and then you know what I mean. You just kind of come back, and like it's all different kids and stuff, you know, and you're kind of like, you know, oh, all my buddies are gone, you know, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, just whatever, you know.
I mean, getting out into the world and making one's immediate surroundings a little better, I feel like that is something that so many of us could really benefit from by building relationships and trying to make our immediate surroundings just a little bit better instead of worrying about so many things out in the greater world that we have no control over. Yeah. Working at the hyper local is a way that everybody can make an immediate impact. And that's kind of what I get from you on a song like these, where you're hearing these stories and you're doing some kind of local work and you're actually seeking to like work in like a hyper local way in order to make what you can see around you just a little better, and then kind of conveying those messages via music. It's really powerful.
Yeah, I kind of I guess I started that because I take the bus all the time, you know. So I'd see like people who are obviously new to Canada having a hard time like even like navigating the getting on the bus.
Yeah.
I remember, or it's probably not a lot, but you know what I mean? Like I have a couple, or at least one specific instance, like where I was sitting there and like kind of like profoundly affected me. Like when I realized like, you know, like people are coming here like with so different knowledge of their general day-to-day life that this is like coming to Winnipeg's completely different, especially when it's so cold.
Yeah.
You know, like people like I can't even imagine how it must feel for people to come to such a cold place from a warm place. Like I've seen kids like start running and just like fall on the ground thinking they've frozen their lungs, like, and they're gonna die and suffocate, you know?
Yeah.
Like, cause like where else do you run and just your lungs can't even handle it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like literally seeing kids like they're drowning in the sea, flipping out, and you're just like, dude, your lungs will warm up in a second. Like, you know, like just that kind of experience, like it just, I don't know. It's just like you either are the type of person who likes other, or you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You either like other people and want to help, or you're a dick that fucking doesn't. And it almost seems like that's the way, you know, you choose to be a dick or you don't. Like, I don't really know what else there is. Like,
well, that is perfect. That is a perfect place to stop. But Todd, thank you so much for giving me this time to talk so much about I Spy and the history of that band, joining Propaganda and bringing new material over, and then so much detail about today's Empires, tomorrow's Ashes, and the reissue process, and all these great stories. I'm just super thrilled that we were able to hang out today. It just kind of made my Friday.
Fuck the Border, one of the best songs ever. Half of me just wanted to call in and yell the entire goddamn song into the phone, but I'm not going to do that. I'll spare everyone. But Todd sounds madder in this song than the maddest person ever in the history of humanity has ever sounded. And it's the greatest. Fuck the Border.
Chris, thank you so much for joining me for Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
Greg, thanks so much for having me.
It's a delight to have you here every time, Chris, whether you're chatting with me way back in the day for Duplicate Keys or Keith on that covers episode. We are continuously thrilled with the band's, support and, encouragement that we keep this crazy experiment going that we've got over here. So it just means a lot that you're willing to spend some time with me post tour to jump in here and chat with me about a catastrophic break with Consensus Reality. So welcome back from tour.
Well, thanks so much. And the feeling is very mutual between us and you guys.
It's fabulous. Well, Chris, we're going to jump right in here because we've got a lot of ground to cover for the record. And we're going to do a sort of song by song breakdown for the Catastrophic Break Patreon record, which was recently released worldwide to the public. So I'm wondering if you can just, in your recollection, tell me how you came to start thinking about doing music and committing to, the labor of making music for your Patreon. I'm curious about where this all started for you and how this project kind of came together in your mind.
Well, I mean, it just seemed like an interesting idea to me, hopefully for the listeners, but especially for me, because I've never really played music in any meaningful sense with anybody outside of propaganda. So that's like, that's pretty much 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me kind of curious whether or not, like, could I actually do something like this? And would it be successful? Would it be a failure? And I thought, well, whatever happens, I would probably learn a lot from the process of doing it with people from outside of propaganda. So I was intrigued by the possibility of it, and I think the possibility of failure on my own terms was really intriguing to me, because part of the motivation for the whole Patreon project in general initially, well, still, was the desire to do something with like complete autonomy, where whether something I do succeeds or fails is just like it's in my hands. Like I haven't had that opportunity in my creative life pretty much ever. And I think I've realized that I think I need that kind of autonomy in, like, even if it's, off in the wilderness, I just need something, even if it turns out to be an embarrassing failure, which I don't think most of the Patreon stuff is, but I like I say, I was intrigued by the possibility of failing on my own terms. In Propagandy, obviously, everybody chimes in on it's not like there's not autonomy in Propagandy. Like I think, especially Todd and I, as the prime songwriters, we try to give each other the chance to, even when we doubt the other guy's ideas, I think we both try to let it happen, but there is a limit to it. And I think we both feel those limits every so often, because people are chiming in on our ideas. And even if verbally we're like, oh yeah, go ahead, try that. There's body language, that is telling you, okay, they're not loving this. And that is it's not an infringement on people's autonomy, but it's just it's not the autonomy I was looking for. Like, I think I needed an outlet where I could be utterly autonomous with creative decisions. And like, I guess what it is everybody else in the band has their own private, personal creative outlets that I don't get to weigh in on. Like, Sulynn has a bunch of various guitar-oriented projects. Beav builds guitars. I don't get to weigh in on that. Todd paints, all these things they do on their own that I don't weigh in on, and of course I wouldn't. And they get to succeed or fail with that kind of autonomy. And I think I've watched that longingly over the years, and I guess I wanted a piece of it. And I think the Patreon thing and the music idea was the most casual way I could think of doing that without it becoming a distraction for Propaganda, because that's not what I wanted. I didn't want it to seem like I didn't want it to be just a distraction, like that people are like, oh, he's doing this thing on his own. I just wanted it to be a project sort of off in the weeds that people that are really into it would dig, but not that would become this thing that would take anything away from the band.
Wonderful. I did a lot of conversations with other people who played on the record, and a few times it came up to where there was a list that came out with some possible songs to consider. Do you remember if you had like an original list of Propagandy songs that you were considering for the reimagined versions that eventually went on? Do you remember the full list that you made?
No.
Okay.
I had some ideas. Obviously, I think Speculative Fiction and Coach's Corner were on that because we obviously did something with those.
Yeah.
My guess is that other songs on the list would have been Without Love, probably Potemkin City Limits. I'm pretty sure I had this idea with Murray Pulver to do a version of Victory Lap that was in a George Michael style.
Awesome.
But that never came to be. Probably Zoochosis, possibly Cop Just Out of Frame. I think America's Army. But
nice.
Like, I don't actually have a list. I don't remember what I was bandying about with these guys.
Totally fine. Well, and I was thinking about what you were saying a minute ago about, your need for this other thing that doesn't distract from the band. And I see you've done several things over the years. You did, Escape Velocity with Derek for a long time. and the Propaganda podcast, short-lived one, but then there's also G7 radio. So there's a few things that you've done over the years that a lot of people have really appreciated that are just outside the band,
Right. Exactly. Outside the band, but still not autonomous.
Right. Yes. Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense now. Okay. Well, I want to start diving into these songs here. We've got, I kind of want to go through the record, track by track, and just hear your stories that spring to mind. There's no wrong answer, obviously. I'm just looking to hear your, Mars rover, on the ground sort of stories here. Yeah. So let's start with speculative fiction.
A new wide curtain drawn across the 49th parallel. Cut out diplomatic ties as we expel all American dignitary.
What was special about the reimagined process for this tune for you? What makes this one kind of special to you, like looking back on it?
Well, I know I just got finished saying that this was all about complete autonomy,
right?
Having the ability to make completely autonomous creative decisions, but it was actually letting go is what stood out to me for this. And I know that seems to contradict this idea of autonomy, but it was actually extremely liberating and interesting and instructive for me to make the completely autonomous decision to get out of the way and not backseat drive the process of making the song with these guys, like these real world, highly accomplished and unbelievably talented studio musicians, get out of the way as they interpret the song. I guess in their own musical dialect. It was fucking fascinating to watch and hear it unfold in real time. Like half the time, my jaw was on the floor at how fast things were coming together with these guys. The ease with which each of these musicians would find their place so quickly in these recorded performances. That Murray had just, like, they didn't come in knowing the song. Murray was just scribbling down the structure on a piece of paper literally moments before the guy pressed record. So they weren't belaboring, they weren't worrying about that, and they weren't belaboring things that we tend to obsess about when we record propaganda. They weren't obsessing over every guitar part or bass fill or drum roll, and like they weren't even checking their tunings with a tuner between takes. It was like, to me, it was so different from how we roll in propaganda. And I guess just letting that unfold and trusting them was a unique experience for me. And I guess that's just what was special about it, was just letting go.
So I know that Murray was really instrumental in the arrangement process. Can you tell me about like working with Murray before the studio?
Yeah, on this song, I don't know that we really did a lot of work before the studio on this song. I remember getting together with him with the Coach's Corner tune.
Oh, okay.
And we got to the studio and I was like, well, like, should I play these guys the song from the record? And he's like, no, don't worry about it. And he just was scribbling down the structure on paper for these guys and showing them the parts quickly. And I was feeling this anxiety about like, well, I think I should tell them here that this part should go like this. But I was resisting that impulse at the same time because I just didn't want to backseat drive it. I wanted to see what these guys would do with this music, and then whether or not it succeeded or failed was not as important as me letting go and watching the process.
Yeah, like the memories that some of the interviews that we're about to hear share is that you were kind of like almost a super hands-off in the process, and that you seem to be almost like surprised at how these studio session guys work in comparison to your own history in music. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was shocked. I was shocked and like kind of exhilarated. And probably to them, it was like, they were probably bemused that every time Murray would show me an idea, I'd be like, that's fucking awesome. Like,
yeah,
literally every time. and he would just start laughing. Like, I think he thought, are you serious? Like, everything's a good idea, but it literally was everything these guys would play. I was like, fuck, that's amazing. And which helped me let go, because then I could just trust that they were going to take it in some really cool direction. So, yeah, my appreciation for what they do was just like, it was enormous.
What was the vocal process like for you? Well, like when you got home, because I know that you did vocals at your house, right?
Yeah. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it in front of those guys.
Yeah. Tell me about this.
I just did my usual thing. Like in propaganda, I also tend to do this. Like I will, if I have to, or if I feel like I need direction, I'll do it. I'll do the vocals with everybody at the studio and get input. But if I know what I want, I'll go home and do those parts. It saves the band some money. And it just gives me the kind of space I need to be feel a little more free and creative. And I think with this, especially because I felt like I was out of my depth with these guys, that I was just too sheepish to do it in front of them. So I went home and did them myself. And then I would send them to Murray and say, well, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Are these vocal melodies good? Like, I wanted his input to see if he had anything different, and he would chime in, and it seemed to be coming together. Like, I was able to pull off. I felt like I was able to keep up by just doing it on my own, not make it seem like I didn't seem as glaringly amateur as I thought I would. Doing it this way. So, because I remember there was one point in the studio where Murray was trying to get me to sing along while they were tracking. It was just like a nightmare to me. It was like one of the terrible dreams where, you're naked at school or something.
Yeah.
So I was glad he was up for, letting me investigate that stuff at home.
Chris, let's move on to track 2 on the record. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, sweet. So we got Panorama.
Down an alley, deep through New York, I did it for today. And the sky is warm, concrete from far below, rising up above, surrounded by shadows, done without guards, and all strangers alike are riding the blind, the purple of their eyes.
By Voivod, and I want to hear your take on this record. I've been listening to some Voivod recently, and Angel Rat is an really interesting release, and I'm wondering if you can just tell me your backstory with regards to this record, perhaps.
Yeah, Angel Rat. It's interesting because Angel Rat came out. I can't remember the year, but I remember it being a controversial release amongst my my musical peer group at the time, and it kind of marked a point in my relationship with Voivod where, like, in retrospect, how I see it is that they moved ahead of where I was at for a few years musically. Like, I was still paying attention, I was still buying the records when they put them out throughout the 90s, but I was having a lot of trouble connecting to the records in the same way that I did in the 80s. And it wasn't really until probably I think in 2000 they put out the self-titled LP with Jason Newsted on bass,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like, okay, well, I'm either catching up to them, or yeah, I don't know what it was. I guess I felt like I felt like I connected to that record more than what I had connected to for the previous 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of made me look back on the 90s output, particularly Angel Rat and Outer Limits. And I think I finally caught up to where they were going at the time. And I now think Angel Rat and Outer Limits are almost their most interesting records.
Mm.
So that was, that's always a fun epiphany, not getting something for a long time and then finally getting it. So, and that's why, Panorama, I liked when it came out. I thought it was an amazing song then, but the rest of the record didn't connect with me. Now it does. And I just wanted to pay tribute to that fact by doing this song instead of some old 80s classic.
Right. Well, total side note. I remember when you sold a lot of your record collection. Did you know that I personally bought your Dimension Hatros when you sold that?
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So I allowed myself one record from your record sale. And so I have your copy of Dimension Hatros, which I felt was an appropriate record to buy from your collection, because without, you mentioning Voivod so many times over the years, that's a band that I likely never would have found on my own in my entire life. So I was like, this is a one thing that I'm going to get. So I have your Dimension Hatros in my collection over here.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. So this is a special one for me because Panorama, you get to reunite with Beeve for a recording after his time in Propagandy, along with the rest of Agassi, including, Derek Hogue that we mentioned earlier, and Ryan Nash. And Ryan's been on the podcast before, and I actually got to meet Ryan in Winnipeg last year at your trio of shows over the Canadian Thanksgiving weekend. But I'm curious about your time, about what did you enjoy most about this process of getting involved with Agassi, but also Beeve again?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was just the most fun part about it was playing with Agassi, going to their jam space and trying to jam the song out with them was fun. Going into the studio with JP with those guys, it was just fun all around. They're obviously Beeve is one of my favorite guitarists of all time.
Yeah.
So that was great. And we both played guitar on there, so it was fun to play guitar with him again. And Ryan and Derek are awesome. And it was just very easygoing and fun time.
Any studio stories or memories that stand out to you about working with those guys?
No, it didn't take very long. I think we only jammed it in the studio a few times before we were done. So it was very painless, and it was just a nice day hanging out with them.
Awesome. Did you do the vocals on this one at home as well? Or is all the music with JP, or did you do vocals with JP as well?
I did vocals in the studio, but then I redid them at home just to, I sang, I think we played live. I think it's footage of us playing everything live. Then I redid them.
Nice.
To clean them up.
Well, I know that you were showing off the guitar that Beeve built for you from Strange Earth Guitars on your Patreon. Any thoughts on your new axe that you've added to your collection there?
Oh, it's awesome. It's a really cool guitar. Nothing will ever depose my SG.
Right.
But, this one's pretty close.
Nice. Very cool. Well, it's a special thing too, because of the history that you two guys have and your working relationship and your personal friendship. I think it's awesome that he's building guitars. Did he finish Todd's guitar yet?
I think that's still happening.
Nice.
Oh, wait. Maybe he's done that. Was it a 7-string too? I think he was building him a 7-string.
So, Chris, let's move into the next song, Help Me, originally by Concrete Blonde.
Teach me how to pray. Tell me what to say. Help me, help me, help me find my way. I never complain at games. You know
And True is the first song that Propaganda ever recorded with Todd on bass, if I'm not mistaken. And we featured an interview with you on this podcast on episode 60, talking about Concrete Blonde and True. But now we have another one, Help Me. So I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about your fandom of Concrete Blonde, kind of going back and tell me your story with relation to that band and Jeanette Napolitano's work.
Well, I think it began probably in the late 80s. It probably wasn't the first record that I encountered. I think what probably happened was I saw the video for the song "God Is a Bullet"
Mm-hmm.
On the Canadian version of MTV, which was called Much Music, and I remember the video pretty clearly, and I remember being immediately intrigued by Concrete Blonde because they had this they had a metallic edge to them, but they were this weird hybrid of like glam punk and goth.
Yeah.
Like this vibe that I hadn't really experienced and certainly didn't expect to like before. And at the front of it, they had this like total powerhouse vocalist. And, you know, of course, at the time, I'm a teenager, so I also become deeply infatuated with this powerhouse vocalist.
Yeah.
With whom I feel some sort of intense kinship when I read her lyrics at the time, and not in any like dark, unhealthy way. You know, I had a sense of humor about it. Of course,
Sure.
I really admired her, and I thought of all the things I was seeing on music television, she really stood out from the pack. Like there was really nothing else like it at the time that I recall. So it really made an impression on me. And, you know, I was really, really, really single-minded about my music back then. You know, it was pure thrash metal with a few exceptions.
Yep.
But this kind of sparked an interest that made me go to the record store and start checking out the records. And I'm glad I did, because there was a lot in there that I found very compelling.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people will resonate with that too, when you kind of like shoehorn yourself into like a single genre of music. And I did the exact same thing when I was like 14, 15, 16. And then I got a job at a record store and I came in and I was like, I can list every Bad Religion album in order and with all their track listings front to back. And they were like, well, that is not interesting at all. You have so much to learn. Maybe we should fire you. So I kind of had the same exact thing. And it's wonderful to bust out of that and to appreciate a wide spectrum of art. My first Jeanette Napolitano exposure was she sang backing vocals and on a Bad Religion record, Struck a Nerve, their 93 LP. She sung backing vocals on that. So that's my first kind of encounter with her. But their records have been something that I've been throwing on quite a bit because they're perfect house music for whenever I'm, around the house doing chores and stuff. Why did you pick Help Me as a song that you wanted to pursue for this particular record?
I think lyrically, I was just feeling it. I've always felt it. Like I was talking about feeling a kinship through her lyrics. I kind of felt where she was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
She was kind of distilling my own thoughts about existence into this simple, catchy tune. And I think because back in the in the 80s, I would, I'd make a lot of mixtapes, and this was the song that would probably show up the most on a mixtape from Concrete Blonde.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just the song of theirs that has really stuck out to me as being a song I wish I had written, or I felt the most kinship with.
Did you hear this record in '89? It's off their free LP from '89. Was this one that you found in it, like right when it came out? Is this kind of like a one that hit you immediately?
Well, this would have been on the same record as "God Is a Bullet," right? Am I right?
Yeah. That's "God Is a Bullet's" the opening track.
So yeah, I would have gone to the record store and got this record. I'm assuming before I got True, or maybe at the same time I got the first record. But yeah, that would have been '89, I would guess.
Wonderful. Okay, so who is on this track? Is this just you and Darren Acorn?
This is me and Darren. Darren is on drums, of course. I think I played bass on this. I was going to say Paul Yee did, but I think he played on the SNFU track.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just me and Darren, and Darren was great because like he's a fellow fan, and I could tell like when we were jamming this at his jam space, like he got it, so to speak. And I mean, on top of that, he's an amazing drummer, and he was just really fun to jam and record this with.
Yeah, so you did perform this one with Darren, like you went over and hung out with him and played these a couple times?
Yeah, he had a practice space with his I think he's more than one band, but up on one of the upper floors in the Grain Exchange building here in Winnipeg. So we went down there, and actually so does James Burton.
Oh, cool.
He was in the same building. So yeah, we went down there and we jammed through these songs before we decided to go into the studio. And yeah, both experiences were great.
Wonderful.
It was just kind of fun to catch up with them too. I've seen Darren like just passing by at a show or something a couple times over the past 25 years. So it was kind of cool to actually spend time with him, talk, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Where did you all do the recording and the tracking and everything on this one?
Private Ear with JP. I think it was with JP, or was it with Dorian? One of these sessions, like everything I think was done. No, not everything. This was done at Private Ear, but I can't remember if it was John Paul Peters there or if he was busy and Dorian Preston helped us record. I can't recall.
Leaving him with more than a migraine. Bright daylight ain't the best time for souls to take flight. It's so easy to lose sight of the good things in life. Some invisible fate has the final say. You must live it again.
Because Darren plays on the next tune, Wreck in Progress by SNFU originally. And Chris, Meantime is my favorite SNFU record. And me too. I gotta ask you why specifically, because I came to SNFU long after they had broken up, basically. But you didn't. So why is this your favorite SNFU record?
That's a good question.
Besides the fact that it's amazing and it rocks.
Yeah. Well, I think because they have a number of records that are amazing and rock throughout the years, and records that are considered, absolute classics, especially in Western Canadian punk circles. I think on this record, I felt like Chai Pig really uncovered a part of himself that I had sensed on previous records, but not to this degree. I feel like there was something obviously honest in what Chai Pig was putting out there, and it was sad and hopeful.
Yeah.
And like throughout the whole record lyrically, I guess there's that sense of sad / hopeful going on. And I guess because it was happening in conjunction with this kind of lightning in a bottle kind of chemistry with Mark Belkey's riffs, that I found it exceptionally moving. Like so many evocative moments on the record for me, that I think the record just sometimes floors me. I've enjoyed almost all of their previous output, but I was never moved as much as I was by any of their previous records compared to this one.
Yeah. You know, and I know that you've talked about this elsewhere, but you guys had the chance to release this record on G7, didn't you?
We did. Yeah. And we didn't do it.
How do you feel about that now?
Well, for a number of years, I called it one of my greatest regrets of G7. But looking back now, G7 was, I don't know if we knew it at the time. We probably had a sense of it, but we were nearing the end of maintaining our enthusiasm for putting records out.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, it would have been a big fucking bummer to leave SNFU hanging, after putting the record out. So I guess now I'm glad I got to enjoy it strictly as a super fan and not somebody who felt responsible for whether or not it did well from a sales perspective for the band.
Sure. What did you enjoy the most about making this version of Wreck in Progress with Paul Yee on bass and Darren Acorn on drums? Tell me about this adaptation of yours.
Well, I guess again, recording with Darren was a really fun experience for me. I don't know if you probably do know this from talking to him, but he used to be in a band called Sandfly Fever back in the day, and they were one of the bands. There was probably 3 bands that we played a lot with back in those days, and that was one of those bands when we were getting started. And from the get-go, I think everybody in our band admired the way Darren played drums, and he loves playing drums, and he makes what he does seem really effortless. And he's a music lover, and on this track, he killed it. And in some ways, it reminded me, like, if you told me, if you played this track to me and told me it was Jord playing, I'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds about right. Except, he's dishing out a different vibe. But I don't know, something about that Beyond the Process was really fun to me, that I could hear a certain spirit in his playing that was familiar to me and that I really, really appreciate.
All right. So, Chris, we're going to take a little turn here in tone and style, and we're going to chat about Sacrifice, who Propaganda did a split 7-inch with, as everybody knows. And if you go back on this very podcast, way back in the very beginning, I think episode 11, we talked to Joe Rico and Rob Urbanati from Sacrifice about that split 7-inch. So Sacrifice has been here before, and I am delighted to chat with you about Sacrifice. So thoughts on Sacrifice? Add some words here. What do you think?
They rule.
Yeah.
They fucking rule. Very underrated band, especially in the late 80s and early 90s. In my opinion, should have been as big as Slayer. When I listened to a record like Soldiers of Misfortune, they were basically taking what Slayer and Metallica had been doing and doing it in what I felt was a more epic and punishing direction that maybe had more potential.
Yeah.
But that's my personal biased opinion, but
Yeah.
I really think they got cheated out of a longer career.
I tell you what, I saw Metallica here in Buffalo in late August. They played in the stadium where the Buffalo Bills play. And thinking about seeing Sacrifice in a place like that would be so huge, like beyond massive. And so I love those guys. I've gotten into their records, Forward Determination, Soldiers of Misfortune. It's a great collection of songs. And so I'm really glad that you kind of switched it up for, like, it seems like it's such a unique challenge for you coming from the musical like background that you're most well known for, and then diving into this. But this is had to have been insanely difficult to do in Defiance. And I'm wondering if you can talk to me about the process of getting into the headspace to tackle Sacrifice's music for Patreon.
Yeah. I definitely, before I did any recording for it, I knew I was biting off more than I could chew from a guitar perspective, and especially from a vocal perspective. But I decided early on I wasn't going to worry about that, and I was just going to do my best and not worry about playing it as good as Sacrifice played it. I was just going to worry about playing it with the same enthusiasm I would have when I'm up front at a Sacrifice show as a fan. Like, obviously there's no way I'm going to be able to sound like Rob Urbanati. His vocals are insane. So
yeah.
But my goal was, I guess my first goal was to get a drummer who could fucking kill it on the drums, and that happened with James Burton. He just fucking killed it. So on top of that, I was gonna sing it as if I were mic'd up while I was up front at a Sacrifice gig.
Yes.
Which is what I ended up doing. That's just so the vocals on both these Sacrifice tunes, that's just me acting like I'm up front at a Sacrifice show. The guitar was a little more difficult to make sound convincing with that same philosophy. Enthusiasm was only taking me so far. And I actually ended up messaging Rob while I was doing these guitars. I was like, how the fuck did you guys play this breakdown riff at this tempo on that record? Because I was like, this is not possible. A human can't do it. And he actually messaged back like, I have no idea. We were just young. Like, he was also at a loss to explain it. But so I just did my best, tried to have fun, was a little more forensic about the guitars, like punching parts in a little more. It was a little less like playing as a fan, and really concentrating on trying to be accurate. But I was also, at the same time, I was trying to get the feel of what writing and recording this track must have been like for them back in the 80s. Like, it must have been so exciting for them, breaking this new ground. And I wanted I wanted a piece of that excitement, and by reverse engineering the track, I got a taste of that, which I guess was the overarching goal, was just to get a taste of what it must have been like to be those guys, as teenagers or young 20-year-olds, making these tracks back in the 80s.
Nice. So you got James Burton and Jameel Russell on this tune, and I've chatted with both of them, and I'm wondering if you can talk to me about what it was like working with those guys and what your, thoughts on their performances are.
Well, with Jameel, I didn't even get to be there with him. I can't remember if it was he recorded his bass tracks with Dorian Preston, and for some reason I couldn't be there. I don't know if it was COVID at the time or if it was like kids activity. I can't remember what it was, but I was like, Jameel, I'm not going to be there. Can you still do this? And he was like, yeah, totally. So I didn't actually get to hang out with him. But with James, I got to go to his practice space and we jammed these out live, and then we did it in the studio. And doing with James was awesome, not just because he's this double kick monster, but he was really into trying to match the energy and the execution of Gus Pin, which is no small feat, especially
right.
Gus Pin. And I think he really nailed the, especially in Defiance, he was nailing that relentless sense of acceleration and fury of the song. And he was like just ripping these cool drum fills too. So it was awesome. Yeah.
Chris, let's go back to the next track on the record, which is Dear Coach's Corner.
From pedal to the God no. Every fine memory of childhood that I know.
I'm wondering if you can talk to me about what stands out to you about the reimagining of Dear Coach's Corner. What stands out to you that you can remember?
I guess the strongest memory and maybe the most representative memory of the whole project was the first time I went over to Murray's house to even investigate whether this idea was feasible or not. Like I'd run into him at one of my son's soccer games. I think his nephew or a friend's nephew was on my son's team, and I had just been asking him about what he was doing for work, and he told me about production. And I was asking him, well, what does production entail? And I made a joke about him helping me record some songs, and he was like, yeah, man, I'd be up for that if you have something, and which I was surprised by. And then I went home and started thinking, well, maybe this isn't as big of a joke of an idea as I think it is, which is a real strength of Murray's, which is to instill confidence and calm and a sense of possibility in people like me that grapple with self-doubt. But so yeah, anyways, I went to his house to talk about it, and he was like, well, man, let's hear what you got. And he pulled out this guitar, and I was like, oh, okay. He had this guitar, I think it's called a dobro. It has like a steel top thing on it.
Okay.
And he wanted me to play on a different guitar, this acoustic version of Dear Coach's Corner, which, I was mortified to even attempt. But again, Murray is very disarming and he also has a really good sense of humor, which kind of puts people at ease. So I was up for giving it a shot. And so I started, and Murray just joined in, and like immediately I was just bowled over at how legit it sounded despite my vocals and my guitar playing. I was like, fuck, this is it. This is all it has to be. Like all you need is Murray Pulver on this dobro or whatever it's called to pull a legit sounding song out of thin air. And it was a cool moment for me because it kind of unveiled the essence of the song itself, and it was like this weird affirmation that it was an actual song and not just a bunch of well executed clattering and shrieking. Like,
Right.
like I knew it was a legit song in some ways, but the way Murray played it, it was a bit of an epiphany for me. So that was really cool.
Something that stands out to me about the way you talk about Murray and the session players that were on Speculative Fiction and Dear Coach's Corner is that I feel like with Propagandy, you've always described it as, a very laborious process to make the music that you all do in the band. But now you're seeming to work with these people like, Dave Landreth and Murray Pulver, who are playing these songs, but it's so much of a different, like more of a natural style. Like they understand music on such a level that it just comes out of them almost effortlessly, and it helps you re-envision your own work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Like things are laborious with Propaganda. Like it's completely different. But I have to emphasize, I still love that. Like I love the thing I like about being in Propaganda, like primarily, is being in the practice space with those guys and laboring over stuff to the point where we're going insane. So like I'm not like just to be clear, I'm not disparaging that process. It's just it was so different, and to see how these guys do it, and I think somewhere between those two processes is another another level. You can combine the kind of forensic, mind-bending work process in Propaganda with this completely loose and open vibe of these established studio musicians and make something even better.
Do you remember like watching the band play this in the studio while it was being tracked?
Yeah, I do.
What stands out to you? Like, what do you remember whenever you kind of like close your eyes and remember it?
Well, I guess again, like Murray just scribbling down these little charts for the players, moments before Paul pressed record, and these guys just looking at the notes and going, okay. And then he presses record and they start playing, and it's like, what the fuck? It's happening. Like that's all it takes. And particularly I have this vision of looking through the studio glass and seeing like Dave Landreth is just sitting down on like a cab or something, like in the corner, playing, like, not that he wasn't paying attention, like he didn't need to, like, he wasn't hunched over his bass, like worried about what was coming up next. He's just in the moment, playing with a facility that is not familiar, I think, to anybody in our band. And it was just really impressive to me.
Amazing. The vocals, the melody, you've adjusted the melodies, you left out some lyrics at the end, and I'm wondering if you have any reflections on the vocal performance that you kind of went through with the reimagined melody and also the omission of some vocals.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not bad. Like, this vocally, I think, did I have more trouble with this one? I think I had more trouble with this one because it was a little more naked, a little less to hide behind. Maybe it was a touch less or a touch more out of my wheelhouse. But I think I pulled it off good enough, like for who I am. And I actually think at the end of this song, did we make a mistake in the studio with the structure? I can't remember if this was born out of a mistake that we missed a part, but at some part, like the lyrics you're talking about that are missing, I think it was because we made a mistake in the structure. We were like, oh, how do we fix this? And I was like, well, wait a minute, I think actually the idea of the song is actually over there. Like in the song on the Propaganda record, maybe those didn't need to be there. So I was like, okay, well, let's end it there. And I thought that was, I really enjoyed that. Like I was like kind of excited by that. Oh wow, we're changing this, and we're editing it and it works better. which is, I mean, that's subjective, obviously, but I thought it was cool.
Chris, let's go back to Sacrifice a little bit. We've already talked about, your appreciation of Sacrifice and the fandom. We already heard from Jimmy and Jameel a little bit about Sacrifice, but Lost Through Time could not be more different. Than In Defiance. And I'm wondering if you can talk to me about why you picked this tune and kind of like the process and your thoughts on this one compared to In Defiance.
Yeah, the process was pretty much the same as In Defiance, but I probably felt like I was able to lean into this one a little more because there's a little more room to breathe in this song and a little more time to be in the moment as we were recording or as I was recording my parts. Whereas with In Defiance, I was, there's literally milliseconds to pull off a riff or a vocal part. And then you're off to another highly difficult speed riff or vocal line. So with Lost Through Time, I probably had a little more fun with the guitars and vocals compared with In Defiance, which was, I was kind of sweating it at times and stressing a little more. Although I was really putting an emphasis on fun for both of them, but In Defiance is a real challenge. Lost Through Time is also challenging, but I think it gave me a chance to really savor the process. And like I say, lean into the heaviness and that. And again, I was trying to sing it as a fan, which I think has the potential to sound ridiculous at times, but I don't even care. Like, it was just fun.
You've chatted on your Patreon about your process in the last couple of years of trying to continue to learn new guitar playing strategies and methods. A lot of people who follow your Patreon really love when you talk about like the technical side of what you do to continue to develop and grow with your own instrument. And so I'm wondering with these Sacrifice tunes, if you did anything, if you had to learn anything that you've never done before on guitar, did you do any brand new stuff that you had to like learn for the first time to do In Defiance and Lost Through Time?
I think doing the guitar parts for these two songs, maybe particularly In Defiance, was part of an inspiration for me to think a little more about what I was doing with my right hand, my picking hand. I've never really thought about it at all, and to my own detriment. And because I was having trouble with some of the syncing my right and left hands with In Defiance and having to really pay attention, I thought, okay, well, I need to do something about this. Like, I think what I was thinking was, okay, well, with Propaganda songs, the songs end up in my wheelhouse. I'm probably skipping out on certain things because they're too immediately challenging, and I couldn't skip over them with In Defiance. So I thought, well, why don't I figure it out? Why don't I figure out a way to play these a little more convincingly instead of having to punch in everything, and then maybe that will translate into cooler Propaganda parts. So it wasn't the only thing that was kind of making me think about that, but I have been working on that. And it's been a really slow grind to improve my right hand picking and syncing it with my left hand. I'm not a natural guitar player or a musician, but like, I feel like I've made progress over the past few months. And I think Jordan Todd will tell you, and Sulynn too will tell you that. It's just that Jordan and Todd see it more often in the practice space.
Yeah.
That I think they would agree that there's a bit of a difference. It's like, it's a game of millimeters, really. But I think I've gained a couple millimeters in being able to pull off fast picking parts a bit better with more accuracy than I used to be able to do.
Well, that's excellent, because, having so many songs that you've already done in your life, keeping it interesting at this point. I mean, is it keeping it more interesting for you whenever you realize that you've like gained a couple of millimeters and you're like, oh, right on. This is really re-inspiring and reinvigorating at this point?
I think so. I think especially because, in the practice space, it's not even limited to new songs. It's like when playing older songs, and ballparking them is fine, but every time you don't like really nail something in the practice space, there's this little tiny bit of discouragement that runs through my body. And if I can correct that by correcting, or if I can limit that sense of discouragement and turn it into like these little spurts of encouragement when I pull off a part, because I'm no longer just playing fast parts sloppily, then that will increase my interest in being in the practice space and making songs, and will just increase the overall good vibes in the practice space.
Well, I love that learning Sacrifice tunes, In Defiance and Lost Through Time has, a little piece of keeping it fresh for you and keeping yourself growing as a player. Open Hostility. Chris, tell me about Razor.
Forget the bullshit, turn up the tunes. We don't care for what's wrong or right. Don't be a stooge, cause we're not in the mood. We're ready to kick ass tonight. Don't be an ass, just raise up the glass. Copy the only command. Smashing the load until we explode. We don't need to hear from you, man, cause we don't give a damn.
And then tell me about why you picked Open Hostility as a tune to adapt for Catastrophic Break.
I picked this song. I think it's just such a great, down to earth, kind of blue collar celebratory tune about being in a band. And it's a song that's really kind of lost in the Razor discography because it came out on a record that is not considered a classic by the average Canadian metal fan. And I think it's one of their funnest tracks of all time.
Yeah, this is an interesting record. I think it came out in 97-ish. Were you following Razor pretty closely in 97?
It was sort of the same as what I was doing with Voivod. Like I was very dimly following. Like I wasn't following the bands, but when a record would come out and I became aware that the record was out, I'd go get it. But I wasn't necessarily connecting. And I think with the record Open Hostility and Razor's Decibels, I think both those records, they don't actually have a real drummer on them. If I'm not mistaken. And that really was bothering me at the time. I thought you must take the extra step and have a real drummer. But, that wasn't what they were doing at the time. But despite that fact, I still thought, fuck, man, some of these songs are fucking killer. And I thought this track, Open Hostility, well, what if you had a real drummer playing it? And I thought, well, fuck, get James Burton on this and see if I can have some fun with this song.
It's almost like a tribute, right? To an act of respect to the song and to the band to get a real drummer to actually play through this one. Like that, James and I were chatting about that, and it's kind of like, an updated sort of homage to what this the record possibly could have been, but it's a different time and space, and I'm sure the band decided what they decided for very specific reasons back in the 90s. But this is a really cool little tribute to actually put the song to tape with a real drum,
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought just a great party tune.
I love it. Do you have any thoughts on, what James and Jamil were able to come through with you on this one?
Yeah, well, I remember on this one, I think it was this one in particular where James was just like in the studio, was showcasing like these different wild drum fills. And that was really fun. I was just getting amped up every time he'd do one. And like at the end of the song doesn't really resemble the original song at all. He did this crazy fill at the end that he was like, check this out. Did it, and then I was like, oh fuck, that doesn't really, I mean, that's not how the song ends, but I'll change it. And so I adjusted the guitar to fit it, because I thought it was so cool. Like he was just, punch me in at this part and see what you think of this drum fill. He was just doing different ones, and each time it would be totally killer and over the top, and it was just really fun. Yeah. And again, with Jamil, I didn't get to be there with him. I can't remember why, which is funny, like I also saw Jamil at the airport very recently, just in the security line.
Nice.
He said hi for a second. I said, hey Jamil, I'll see you on the other side at the gate. And then we couldn't find each other at the gate, and we're on different planes. But I guess Jamil and I haven't been able to connect in real life too much, but I loved the idea of having Jamil on the Razor and Sacrifice tracks, because Jamil is like, he's OG in the Winnipeg metal scene. I remember him when he was like literally a little kid playing in, I think it was Matricide, one of the early Winnipeg thrash bands. I seen them play at, I can't remember the name of the venue, but there was like it was them playing and a bunch of fucking skinheads just heckling them. And I was really enjoying the band. So it was cool.
All right. So, Chris, we have reached the final track of A Catastrophic Break with Consensus Reality, Wasted Years by Iron Maiden.
And will be till my dying day. So understand. Don't waste your time or waste searching for those wasted years. Face up, make your stand, and realize you're living in the golden years. Too much time on my hands, I got you on my mind. Can't ease this pain.
And I'm wondering if you can just kind of tell me about, your personal experiences with Maiden, your years as a fan. And then after that, tell me a little bit about why you landed on this tune.
Well, as everybody in the early 80s, I was a Iron Maiden fan. My first gig was the Power Slave tour. It was Iron Maiden with Twisted Sister, and it was just so awesome. And I mean, I think there's a theme sort of developing here. Like if I think of Voivod's Panorama, doing a song from a time in my life when I wasn't actually paying enough attention to Voivod, and doing a Razor song from a time when I wasn't paying super attention to Razor. And Wasted Years is kind of the same. It's a song from a time in Iron Maiden's life where I had stopped paying particular attention to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was on Somewhere in Time, and it was just, in my world, it was past the era in their career that was considered the classic era, although that's probably not true now. But it was just despite that fact, that the song Wasted Years jumped out to me. And I think the song really captures the what am I doing with my life? There must be something more for me crisis that we all go through at some point. The paradox of which is that when we go through that crisis, we are failing to live in the present moment, and we're missing out on all the gifts that are right there in front of us at the time. And the song says so much, and that's always stuck with me. And I think the year that I recorded this with Darren and Paul on bass was a particularly tough year. So I just felt a real kinship with the song at that time and wanted to go through the process of jamming and recording it.
Excellent. I love this one as the closer for the record. Did you play around with sequencing at all, or did you mess with the order at all when you were thinking about putting this Catastrophic Break record into the world?
Yeah, I find sequencing really fun. I like doing it. I like trying to find a story arc in a collection of songs, and sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes there isn't one, or sometimes that arc is going to be subjectively, internally inconsistent. But I kind of like how this record goes, because the songs are so different in some ways that you would think it wouldn't work, but to my ears, most of the sequencing works. Having this almost folksy version of Dear Coach's Corner with bookended by a sacrifice tune. For some reason I felt it worked. But I said earlier, I spent a lot of years making mixtapes as a kid, agonizing over which band should start side B and which band should, how the sequencing should go on a mixtape. And I feel like I got good at it from liking doing that so much. So I don't think this took a long time to sequence. But I jostled stuff around here and there, but the sequence that is currently on there, I think came together pretty quickly.
Awesome. So we've talked about, there's such a wide variety of vocalists that are represented throughout the record. We got Jeanette Napolitano, Rob Urbanati, Chai Pig. So Maiden is such a vocally, I hate this term, vocally epic band. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on what it was like to do your own spin on a Maiden tune, which is so well known around the world for their vocals.
Yeah, like Bruce Dickinson he sings pretty high in the song, and there was I didn't want to punch everything in, so I was trying to keep it. I had to change a couple things because I think my vocals I'm a little more capable now of getting up there in range than I was when this was recorded. So there's a few parts on this song where I chose lower range versions compared to the original, but I think they work, and I think they work because they are more in my wheelhouse. But yeah, it was a challenge, but it was really, I felt I had a really good time singing it despite the challenge.
Awesome. Did every single tune's final vocal cut on A Catastrophic Break, were all of those recorded in your house, or were there some that made the final cut that were recorded in the studio?
No, I think all at my house.
Okay.
That was as much probably a financial decision as anything else. Like just,
yeah,
because it was, for some of the tracks, I think on the Sacrifice tracks specifically, I tried a few attempts and was almost bailing on the songs as possibilities for the record, because I was like, this isn't going to work, because I started off trying to sing like Rob Urbanati, for example, and then had the epiphany, well, no, I should sing it like a fan, like somebody in the crowd. And then I was like, okay, that works. So that would have cost a lot of money if I had tried that in the studio and bailed on it, and then maybe it wouldn't have even made the record. So yeah, I think everything was happening in my comfort zone of the basement here.
Yeah. Chris, we've reached the end of the record, but, a lot of, this is a Patreon supported project that came to fruition because some ultra nerds got together and decided to, support what you're doing over there. And I think that so many people who haven't ever heard it yet should sign up because of the really direct and fantastic storytelling that you weave into the podcast episodes, but also because of the music that you've done over the years. And I'm wondering if you have any reflections, I think must be 4-ish years into this Patreon project at this point. And I'm wondering if you have any sort of overall takeaway messages about what you've enjoyed about it and kind of what it brings for your life.
Huh. As you well know, I don't treat it like a full-time thing. It's this sporadic, inconsistent, but autonomous project. And I think what I still enjoy and what I really want to thank people for supporting it is that it is still providing me with this very autonomous outlet to feel creative on my own, whether it's successful or a failure. So I really appreciate everybody who supports it and everybody who is patient enough to endure the inconsistency of the project.
Well, Chris, I know that you share these sentiments as well, but I would love to thank Murray Pulver, Paul Yee, Ryan Nash, Darren Acorn, Jameel Russell, James Burton for chatting with me about these tunes. I'd also like to thank Joe Rico from Sacrifice for answering a couple of my questions digitally via email. So, Chris, I know you have a lot of gratitude to all the people who appeared on this record and helped make it possible. Thank you so much for joining me in the post-Propaganda touring wildness that has been October and September of 2022. It means a whole lot to me that you took so much time out to revisit this record in a track-by-track way. So thank you so much for doing this with me.
And thanks to you, Greg, for the exact same thing, for taking the time to continually do this and support our little projects up here. Really appreciate it.
For this project.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
So when we reached out to you, you mentioned 3 songs that you really love, and Without Love being in the top 3 of your favorite Propaganda songs. What's it about this track that really connects with you?
Well, I think initially, like before being in the band, was lyrically, it's the thing that we all experience, like kind of grieving of people that we care about passing, and it's just written really beautifully and in a reflective way, just making sense of it, when someone passes that matters to you, and it just really makes you think like all these, you get really caught up on the details in life, the inconveniences, and that probably aren't even that bad, and really when it comes down to, like, the most important thing about living is like just loving, just loving like your people around you, and just having that kind of connection. So that to me is what, like, and in a very beautifully delivered way, the way Chris does it in this song is kind of what was special about it as a listener. And then as a guitarist, like, just playing, because I didn't really ever play it until I joined the band. Yeah, it's just as fun too. Like I was excited about that. Like, oh, not only is it satisfying from a lyrical perspective, like it's really fun on the guitar too.
Yeah. So the other songs that you talked about, Night Letters and Tertium, musically from a novice, they're pretty different. How does it this song compare, either playing it live or playing it with the band?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it like those other two are like the heavy hitters, like very chug kind of based, playing on the guitar and just heavy in general. This one, I think it grooves more, and I think at least for me, like those are the two things I always loved about music, or like is heavy music, kind of like palm muting, chugging, like really heavy like driving stuff, and then I like things that groove, like almost like dancey stuff. I'm not saying this is like a dancey tune in that respect, but there are moments in which it feels like it's kind of like moves like the ocean, if I'm getting too like cheesy here. But I should have played these before coming on here, so I'd have more specifics. Now I'm like, I can only like visualize riffs and kind of get the idea. But so yeah, I think, but similar, where it's like what I said about Night Letters and Tertium, where it's like it's one of those from start to finish. Like I love every riff. They're very strong riffs, one after the other, and pretty different from each other too. So.
Would this kind of feel like a breather compared to the other songs if you're playing it live?
Yeah, in a different way. I think with things like Tertium and Night Letters, like because those are nonstop. Not as much like breathing room, like Without Love. Those are like physically demanding in a way where like you forget to breathe. Like that's part of like you need to remind yourself, like, hey, like holy shit, like because your whole time is taken like just playing something. So that one, so this one, it's not that it's like it's not challenging in that way. Like it has a different almost pulse, but I think technique wise, it still has its moments. Like there's a lot of like string skipping, a lot like there's moving around plenty. Definitely like your right hand's busy, but like, and again, a different way. It's almost like Night Letters and Tertium are like scribbling on a paper like this, and Without Love is like kind of like painting, like nice, and you have time, but it's moving a lot. It's constant movement in a different way.
Yeah, no, that's a great visualization. That's a great analogy there. So this song is incredibly important to a lot of people. For me, for Greg, one of my favorite YouTube videos, Bill Stevenson from The Descendants, and the producer and supporting cast saying it's the greatest song of all time.
You know what was good, man? That Propaganda. Ooh, that song Without Love by Propaganda. Oh, you know that all of nature ends in tragedy, and I was the first to finally fade away from my grandfather's memory. But how long to the day my memories of him finally fade away, dissolving into gray. You know that song?
Oh yeah, dude.
Oh, best song ever. Best song ever. As Chloe slipped away, I held her in my arms, reduced to please don't leave me. What will I do? Yeah.
So how was it to work with Propaganda since we're
no
in
amount
Canada?
of no amount of money, drugs, or tears could keep her here. What purpose did her suffering serve? Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. So how was it working with Propaganda since we're in Canada?
They're the best.
Yeah.
They're the best.
Jordy's great drummer too,
they're
right?
The best. They're the best band in the world. The's no better band than them.
Oh really? It's like one of your favorite bands? Yeah.
They shred. And then you see them live, and it's like, wow,
this is just like the album.
The fuck are they doing that?
Yeah.
I couldn't play what he's playing on guitar at half speed if my life depended on it. And then plus he's singing too.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Take my life instead of hers, but no amount of money, drugs, and tears could keep her here. What purpose did her suffering serve?
This brings up a lot of emotion for me. What do you like about the song? You mentioned before lyrically, What else stands out to you about the words in this track?
Yeah, there's just a lot of strong moments. I think it is, again, reflective in like just making sense of like existence. Like, and I like the line like revenge ain't no solution. It's kind of like tells you, like, let's say, especially if with family, like when a family member passes, and very likely with family, you've had your moments where you butt heads and maybe you fight, you yell, and you kind of just realize, like, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. You almost wasted the time where you could have, like, it wasn't worth it, like to like have such resentment over potentially like pride or whatever the specifics are, like there's such limited time with each other. Like, this is not the way to spend it. So there's a lot of that, and like the whole, like, please don't leave me, it's just like, you're kind of, it's the whole, like, the stages of grief, like, like acceptance, like and yeah, just kind of like, that's the one that you're just like pleading, like you're bargaining. That's, I know, one of the stages of grief, So
I remember Chris on his podcast said he was really uncertain when he wrote this, and then releasing it, putting out such a personal song to the public that was pretty different from what the band had done before. Do you remember what maybe you first thought or felt when you first heard this track?
I wish I did, actually. I don't. I feel like I may have told some, like, maybe potentially like family members or someone that maybe wasn't into the band, like, handed them the vinyl, read the lyrics to this, so it's like, I remember that, but I kind of don't remember the specifics. But it's definitely one of those that, like, you kind of, after hearing it or playing it through one time, kind of like, let me listen back again and make sure I caught all of that. Like, there's like kind of these, it's definitely one that you can sit with and yourself, make you think about, like, your life and the people around you and things. Even, I mean, I like the opening, even just a whole, like, all of nature ends in tragedy, like that's really a strong line. I actually think about that line, like, every so often, like, just even you think about it with, like, pets or trees or anything, like, it is true, like, everything leads to this, like not even just end, but just saying that, like, the end is tragedy. It's a really interesting way of putting it,
Yeah, I think it's funny how you mentioned sharing this with family. So, like, just this week, I texted my dad the lyrics, just saying, like, oh, preparing for this interview. And my dad's, like, into Bob Seger and Creedence and, like, Midwest dad rock, which is cool. But we've never really bonded over the music I like, even though he's really supportive. And even sending him the lyrics, his response was literally just like, good Lord, like, those are amazing lyrics, kind of like going beyond maybe just, someone thinking in terms of punk or metal or whatever.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that, because I think that I can't say truly if that was my first response, but maybe I could see that, like, feeling like this is more than just a punk band. And I think that's even how I felt about supporting Cast in general. Like, this is just like an experience, like music, like into their brains, into their lives, and their surroundings. And yeah, it definitely has that. Even on the guitar too, it's, in a way, it's not very punk. There's actually moments that kind of remind me of Rush, funny enough.
Oh, yeah.
Like, very little moments, but they could disagree or not, but it's kind of my association.
You mentioned before when you were talking to Greg, visualizing one of the tracks, as a painting, like how you saw it as a painting. If you were going to represent this visually, like, what is the painting of Without Love look like?
God, I never thought about that. It's, I guess, almost the color blue comes to mind, but like a darkish blue. I know it's weird, but it's like, there's something, and who knows, it could have been like, maybe the first time I played it, the stage lights were blue. Like, that could be like influence here. but very like sky-like kind of, or even like smoke, or I guess especially like he has that whole like dissolving into gray. Like I even think of like old films, like black and white films, and like the fade. I actually, in that line, I remember thinking about that. So there's multiple ones. I think this one's like hard, like where Tertium I could be the whole song, put like one painting. This one actually I feel like goes everywhere. Like maybe there's multiple. It's like an album, like a different, like an art show more than just a one painting kind of thing for me. I'd have to kind of sit there and think about that. Actually, this reminds me, just as a side note, something I've always like wanted to do, or my sister like will have kids. Like I basically in like a trial with her like kids, play the music without influence of culture, of like subculture being like they don't know like that Judas Priest is metal and you dress like this because you listen to Judas Priest, or they don't know like punk, and kind of have them draw. I think I stole this from someone. Like draw their response. Yeah, I did. Someone I knew, I think, did that with like a kindergarten class. Played the music, and they drew their response. And I think at such a young age, there's again no influence of like fashion, subculture. So it's kind of an interesting. Like I'd just be so curious. That should be a podcast. Someone should do propaganda songs.
Yeah, so much is like built-in perception and stereotypes. Like I host an after-school music club at my school where I teach. Every Friday, students just hang out and we listen to punk and metal. And part of my goal is to break down just those generalizations in like the metal and extreme music community, to be, inclusive and to be supportive and to be as positive as possible. Because unfortunately, like people will hear something and they'll just, assume the exact opposite.
Yeah, and it's like, to me, like if I think music has always been an energy, not like a fashion. Like, so it's like, that's why I like all types of energy, or even like an emotion too. It's like, I'm like, we have various emotions, like, so I'm going to listen to various music because that's being human, So I think, like I definitely am of the sort, I don't like to latch on just to one, even if I maybe more heavily feel connected to one,
Yeah. Speaking of energy, I know you're super busy on stage, but do you notice something different from the crowd when this track gets played versus others?
Yeah, I think there's like a softness, like, and it seems like people really like take it in, like it's like they kind of, they're put in that spot to think, and that's ideal, I think, with like performance. Like it's not just all party, I mean, that's the part of it too, it's good to have a good time, but realistically, like we don't even live like that at all times. So I like that the show reflects that, like it's true to just even your day-to-day being. You're not just always like partying, like you have these moments that are like, yeah, things are sad, like, so it's cool to have that in the set, and yeah, everyone's really like receptive. Like it seems like they're really like feeling it, I know this is actually one of the ones that during parts I started just closing my eyes actually while playing it. I can't do that with many propaganda songs because I'm like trying to, make sure I don't hit wrong notes. But this is one that I as much as almost a full song, I've kind of done a little bit of that, and just so that same thing, like I can feel like I'm in a little deeper without my eyes, and just being able to hear everything, hear the words, so that's pretty cool.
I can see myself.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think like people as an audience also kind of have that similar experience.
Yeah, I see myself like circle pitting during duplicate keys, but this track I want to be a little bit more like reflective and sing along more, and not just like with the band, but there's something that happens in the crowd with the people around you where someone throws their hand on your shoulder, or you look at a stranger and there's like this connection that maybe for some other tracks like won't be the same, but this one definitely hits in that way.
Yeah, and it's cool. Like I didn't know that Chris was like hesitant. So from my perspective, I'm like, he's so good at expressing so many things. So I didn't know that actually, that he thought this was too personal. I understand, So I think also from an audience perspective, like it would be cool to like experience like what that person like just even look like, or even the band, like what they're feeling as the song's going on too. Especially Chris, you know, kind of like taking it in, like seeing how it's affecting like his mood. You know, it's like since it's obviously like his words, you know, but it's also a way like it's the thing that we all can't avoid, like death, you know, and it makes you feel less alone in it. Yeah. I think in those grieving moments, you do feel that, like you do feel alone, and you kind of almost cower. And so in this way, it's like you probably still do, but especially live, for a moment, you can almost in your aloneness feel connected to. It's cool. It's a good experience.
Yeah, there's definitely like this beauty in the words that I think maybe about 15 years ago, like just the idea of death with the loss of a few family members, I was really having a hard time. But there's something about this song that kind of puts things at ease the best they can, I think.
Yeah, and it also helps. It puts to words maybe something that you can't. It's almost giving you a bit of a help, you know, especially like in like traumatic moments like that, where you're like, it's almost you go to such a pure feeling state, and you're trying to make sense of it. So it's nice. I think that's the beauty of music. Like, and I found for myself whenever I'm in those moments, for whatever reasons, that it's like there are certain songs or certain like styles that it's like I just feel are like calling to me, because they seem to really reflect like almost the mood I'm in, or like the kind of state I'm in.
Yeah. And
it's like they might, even if they don't offer an answer, they kind of supplement some kind of like support. Like it's a way to, like, it feels like it matches, you know, like it's a bit of a, yeah, like a support, just something to kind of maybe help to bring it out, you know, to understand.
One idea I've told Greg a lot is that, like, for me, my favorite music has never been just entertainment. You know, it's a net there for you. It's a shoulder to cry on. It's like a rager to kind of get out some negative emotion. And I gotta say, to be able to talk to you about one of my favorite Propaganda songs has been just an honor. And I'm really stoked that you took the time to chat with us.
Yeah, for sure. Like, thanks to you, and thanks to you both, like, for really like having like thought-provoking like questions, and like even having me have moments of like, oh, I've never thought about that. I'm just spending time with these songs just as equally as you guys, but even performing it. That's one of the things too, like I make sure with like performing, like, don't get caught up on trying to just like do a good job. Like, like, remember what the song was meant to do. Like, remember what the intent of the meaning and the music. So it's nice even just to have these conversations to like bring that back, you know. So that is one of the things that has slightly changed a little bit with the band. You know, you're like, better not fuck this up. So yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you both.
Where can people find you online?
SulynHago.com. If you want to hit me up, lessons or anything else, whatever, I'm there.
Well, thank you very much, Sulynn.
Yeah, take it easy. Thank you.
Misery, so much indifference, just so much suffering.